Hello and welcome back from a brief hiatus. We have the Boys of Summer podcast is back for the first time in 10 weeks. We took a little bit of a hiatus there over the summer here. As teachers, we just had to enjoy our summer for a little bit. Nobody really wants to make trades anymore, so we didn't really have a lot to talk about. But several members of the league here in the chat, but Eric and I are going to be the ones hosting. Eric, what is going on? How's the married life treating you?
Oh, it's good, man. It's good. Just been hanging out, chilling. We did a honeymoon a year after, so we went to Universal Studios. So that was pretty
Yeah,
fun. That was cool.
how's your
But
trip?
just enjoying summer, trying to hopefully these Cubs. Oh, it was great, man. I'm a Harry Potter junkie, as most of you guys know. So doing the Harry Potter world and all that was pretty sweet. Spent a lot of money on butterbeer, but it was worth it.
As it should be. All that hard-earned teacher money. They don't pay us millions for
Oh
nothing.
yeah, yeah,
All right,
yeah, exactly. Getting interesting.
let's start off with general baseball storylines here. I'm going to give you a couple to choose from here, but what has been your favorite MLB storyline this year? A couple off the top of my head. We have the larger bases and steals. We have the exciting rookies. We got Ellie De La Cruz. We got Encarnacion Strand. We got Corbin Carroll, obviously. The Sox suck. That's great news. The Cubs are just a blah team. I think the Cubs were drafted by Dave. We got the Otani sweepstakes, and then we have the Rays are the greatest team of all time, and oh no, now the Braves are the greatest team of all time, and oh no, now the Orioles are the greatest team of all time. So, what has been your favorite storyline to track so far?
It's tough for me to say. I just think it might be. I know we're all big baseball fans, but the fact that it just seems like baseball is so much more fun this year than ever. Again, I know some people might give an eye roll when that's said. Like baseball's always been fun, and I agree with that. But there's just a little bit of a different vibe this year with the rule changes, with everything, the shift moving. Every team seems like they have like a really up and coming young player that's kind of fun to watch, even if the team's out of it. There's just been, and to think it's baseball in itself. The Mets are awful. The Padres are underperforming. There's a lot of really, really interesting storylines throughout the game, and the Southsiders still suck. So that always brings a smile to the face.
Yeah, I mean, you always love when the Southsiders suck, and when the big markets. We don't like when the big markets perform well. We always root for the little guys. So when the Mets go out and spend millions and tens of hundreds of millions in the off season, and then they come out and suck, that's always good to see. Same thing with the Padres, as you kind of mentioned there. Obviously the pace of the games has gone up a little bit with the pitch clock, which has made the games a little bit more enjoyable to watch. I feel like the vibes for the MLB have been better than they've been in a while. I'm not seeing a lot of MLB hatred. I'm not seeing a lot of complaining about pace of play. I'm just seeing a lot of people just enjoying watching and following baseball for the first time ever. And I think you're kind of onto something like that. So let's shift the focus over to a fantasy, because that's kind of what we're here for. What's been your favorite fantasy baseball storyline of
Oof.
2023?
The Steels are back, and as you know, I mean, even just right when the league started, I don't know if you remember, I was a proponent of maybe just getting rid of the steal category and
I
replacing it
do
with
remember
something
that.
else because like people just weren't stealing. And I'm a fan of small ball and moving a runner over and all that kind of baseball, everything that involves a baseball game. And I just saw the steal was dying. I mean, it literally was dying. And the fact with the bigger bases, the steal, the moving the run over, I think the shift has had a huge impact on that. I think the fact that the steal is back and it's from a fantasy perspective, such a relevant category again because so many people are able to do it. It's a lot more fun than previous years of let me draft one guy that can get 35 steals and finish, in sixth or seventh in steals, because
Yeah.
that's really how it was.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, obviously the steals and the bigger bags and the pitch clocks are all kind of contributing to that. And I think it's made it more exciting. I mean, more steals means more excitement. And I think it gives us something else to track. I mean, the guys that steal no bases now are hurting you even more than they were before. And the guys that do steal bases, it gives more fantasy relevant to the guys that do. I mean, we look at a team like Tyler, who's got a guy like Willie Castro in his lineup, who's got like 24 steals on the year. That's not a guy that you can play. Wouldn't be fantasy relevant at all. He's not relevant in points leagues. And without the steals category, I mean, it takes kind of players out of the player pool that wouldn't have been relevant that kind of now are. And I think it's good for baseball. It's good for fantasy baseball to kind of see the rise in steals the way that they are. I don't know if this is a surprising storyline or my most frustrating or my most surprising. I don't know what it even is, but mine is what is going on with pitching? I am finding it extremely frustrating to figure out pitching this year, to figure out what the hell is going on with pitchers. I feel like we have had several different pitchers that are like, what the hell is going on? The advanced metrics are not really lining up to who is pitching well, who's not pitching well. We have veterans who are pitching poorly. I wouldn't call Sandy like a Alcantara like a veteran, but like, what the hell happened to Sandy Alcantara? Why has he got a 4.5 ERA now when he's pitching almost exactly like he did last year? Aaron Nola had like a 4.2 ERA, or like I had like a 4.8 at one point. He's kind of starting to bring it back around. Corbin Burns was bad for like the entire first half, and now he's starting to turn it on. And then me and Zach Wheeler is kind of another one who's got like a over 4 ERA. Even Spencer Strider, who's like arguably the best pitcher in the league, had over a 4 ERA when I traded him. I think he's got down to like 3.8, 3.9 now. But at the same time, like that's not what you expect from what we expect to be like one of, if not the best pitcher in the league. Meanwhile, you have the guys that don't line up to what the advanced metrics say they would be, the swing strike rates, the hard contact rates, the stuff plus. When you listen to smart baseball people talk about the guys that they like the most based on the kind of the underlying metrics of what they are, a lot of things that I like to use, it's like, oh, well, we don't really buy into what Marcus Stroman's doing, and he's been leading the league in quality starts all year. Oh, we don't really buy into what Kyle Hendricks is doing, and Kyle Hendricks has another season with a 3 ERA. Tanner Bybee, a lot of these guys that just keep Andrew Abbott is another one. Well, we don't really buy what he's doing. He just keeps going out and pitching well. And like it's been really frustrating to me to figure out who's a good pitcher, who's not a good pitcher in 2023. Have you found it difficult? I mean, you obviously have not, because you found plenty of good pitchers. So what have you done to kind of manage all that, Eric?
Well, it's I don't know, man. I can't attribute too much skill. I've just gotten lucky picking up some dudes off the waiver wire and then them stringing together a few good starts. But I mean, if you really think about it, like I know we've had that kind of fun back and forth conversation about what an ace is, and there's 30 MLB teams, right?
Yeah.
If you look at what the 30th highest ERA in baseball is right now, it's a 3.79. I mean,
Wow.
so I mean, obviously there's multiple players on multiple, so I'm not saying like that's, but I mean, if you're judging, hey, 30 best pitchers in baseball, the 30th best guy has a 3.79. So if you go in even into the top 10, only what is there, six guys that even have under a 3
So I
ERA
got
that
Lucas
qualify.
Giolito, ace.
Yes. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's just I think we're in a world now where like a 3.4, a 3.5 is pretty elite. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy to say, but it could just be the year that we're having. But there's also, and I was going to say this too, there's also not just that dominant pitcher this year. That there just seems to be like those one or two guys, the Striders, the Arrietas, the DeGroms, whomever that hasn't gotten hurt, that has that low 2 ERA that's just lighting the world on fire. And there just isn't that this year. I mean, Blake Snell is the leading MLB ERA leader right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just goes to show there's just not that quite super elite guy. But I also think nowadays, I mean, if you're under a 3 ERA, you're extremely elite, and if you're a mid 3 ERA, you're pretty damn good. I mean, I think that's just the world we live in.
Yeah, and I mean, even like Garrett Cole isn't kind of what he used to be. I mean, his numbers are solid, but the strikeout numbers kind of aren't what we expect. I think he's pitched a little bit better recently, but I think he's been like the one guy that's been like the most consistent this year. I mean, Shohei Ohtani and has a 3.7 ERA, and he was like on the up and come, being like, this guy might be the best pitcher in the league. Kevin Gausman's been solid, and who was the guy I was just thinking about? Um,
That wasn't Zach Gallen, was it?
no, there was somebody maybe that you brought up, but I'm kind of drawing a blank on who. There was one guy I was going to comment on, but yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of right. I think the bar for what we consider to be an ace, or what we consider to be a really good pitcher, has been so lower. But I think that's also attributed to how many poor performances we've seen from our top pitchers. I mean,
Yep.
nobody, I mean, Cole's been pretty solid, and McClanahan's been pretty solid for a good part of the year, but now he's hurt, as he normally is. But it's like, seems like nobody's been kind of invincible this year. Strider with his 3.78 ERA now. I mean, Gausman's gotten lit up twice for like 8 runs. Gallen's been pretty solid. Can't shade there. And it just seems like everybody kind of has their flaws. So it's just it's been a puzzling year. I
It
feel
also seems like everybody's missed at least multiple starts. It doesn't seem like there's many pitchers out there that have made it through every turn of the rotation this year. And I don't know if it's just my team or baseball in general, even more with pitcher injuries, but it just doesn't seem like there's that guy that is going out there every 5 days. Like someone's missing a start somewhere.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think like that's been like the big storyline for me is like the guys that I thought would pitch well didn't pitch well. The guys that I don't think that will sustain it have just continued to sustain it. I mean, and especially like Justin Steele's another one. Like you ask any of like we were a month, 2 months into the year, and all the analysts were like, "Yeah, no, we're not buying it. His stuff's not that good. His velocity isn't good. You know, his location, he doesn't hit his spots, and he gets hit hard, and he doesn't strike out enough people." And then he just keeps going out and shoving. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is we're missing. I don't even know if it's even I'm losing faith in what it means to even be like an advanced analyst anymore. And like I don't really know like what to make of all that. But we could go on and on and
Did your pitcher list get all screwed up from
it did.
preseason?
It
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Come on now.
I looked at my pitcher list and I like it's at one point this year, I was like, man, like according to my pitcher list, like guys who I like trust the most, like they're like, hey, I have the pitcher like number like 2, 8, 9, 12, 28, and 38. And now I have like the sixth best rotation in the league or something like that. So I don't know.
Gotta
We could
love it.
also go into
Baseball.
a bigger conversation about how MLB probably changed the baseballs for another time this year, and that's why pitchers are struggling. But that's a no whole nother fucking can of worms from Rob
Yeah,
Van.
there you go.
We don't have time
Conspiracy
to open
theorist
up.
podcast. There we
Yeah,
go.
exactly. So Eric, do you when we go to our league here, now we can kind of switch to our specific league. Is there a storyline that kind of sticks out from our league that has kind of piqued your eye the most, something that you've
Ooh.
tracked or something that has surprised you the most?
To me, honestly, if I had to just pick one thing, I think the team I've gotten the most wrong so far is either a mixture of Justin and Krim. Justin, I think I had like 11th in the preseason power rankings. I liked his offense. I said it was good. I didn't think the pitching was going to hold up. So Justin is a team I didn't even have making the playoffs. Krim was a team I think I had second or first in my power rankings to start the season. So I think just the surprise of those two teams. I think looked like he set himself up well, and it just never got clicking. And then Justin's team has just been really a steady flow this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean Justin's definitely been a surpriser. Shout out Justin. Justin, I always believed in you. So even though some others didn't, but same could be said about some other guys. I mean, yeah, and then on the flip side, yeah, I had Krim number 1 in the power rankings, in the preseason power ranks before the season started. And then to see where he's at now is just absolutely baffling. But Krim, we all know Krim, that his team in May will never be his team in June, and it'll never be his team in July, and it'll never be his team in August. And that's what we love about him.
Yeah.
He's always looking for who the fuck
Maybe
is
we just don't predict his team next year because it's unpredictable because
it,
his
it
team changes so much.
yeah, I mean it really is, but I mean that's what makes it fun. I think the biggest storyline, I think the most disappointing storyline to me is how early we saw some teams sell. Which I mean some of them turned out to be good deals. I mean the India deal doesn't look terrible. And for Bogarts, like that one kind of worked out, and then like some of them didn't work out, but then it kind of what it did is it kind of guys weren't able to kind of play the market a little bit, and we have the guys that sold early have just kind of been kind of done. Like, they're not really active because they don't really have a whole lot left to give, and their teams are kind of set. And I think it's created just kind of you're either a buyer or a seller, and there's kind of nowhere in between here. And it's kind of limited the kind of transactions and trades that we've seen. And I think that's been a little bit of disappointing. I don't know what's attributed to kind of the downslope of activity we've kind of had recently. Maybe the lack of pods has kind of gotten people a little gun shy. I don't know. Some might argue that the podcasts have made people more gun shy, as we've said in the
Just
chat, that
you.
they don't want to be ridiculed. To me, I just hate when I podcast and then my podcast is used against me. My knowledge and my
Oh,
opinions
do
are
they do they
against
do
me.
they
Then
use that
nobody wants
against
to
you in
trade with me.
negotiations? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's been kind of a storyline there. I, I even honestly, Eric, I haven't looked too much at like the trades overall. We'll look at them kind of one by one. But
Yeah.
is there one of these deals that you think like, wow, this really changed things for one team or the other? If you don't have an answer right now, that's okay.
No, like I said, I was going to look at them more as we went individually. I think the one that stands out a lot is Dexter's obviously in good shape head to head, but obviously the Jordan one I think right now would be huge for him because I think he is dead last roto wise in home runs and RBIs. Like I think
Yeah.
Dexter is dead last, but he's still hanging in there head to head. But I think from a head to head perspective, his team would very much still be in it. It is, but he would really be in it if he had those power bats. And I think on a head to head perspective, he's going to struggle getting those home runs and RBIs now. And I think that was a big one.
It was certainly puzzling at the time, and I mean, good job, Jay. Another win, another trade win by Jay. To kind of Jordan. I mean, I guess you can say maybe, maybe not. I mean, he's supposed to get Jordan Alvarez back this week. He hasn't really gotten much from him yet. But I mean, to only give up Giancarlo Stanton, who's done nothing, Jorge Mateo, I mean, you sold at the absolute peak of what you could get from Jorge Mateo, who now has a 261 on base percentage, and over his last 30 days has 0 home runs,
Yeah,
5
he's
runs
unplayable.
scored, and 4 RBIs. And he's only got 3 steals over his last month. So I mean, those guys who, I mean, he is one that we all looked at him and go, this is not sustainable. This is not who Jorge Mateo is. But Dex set his eyes on what he saw at the time when Jorge Mateo and Asterio Ruiz had 10, 15 steals through the first 20 games, and he's like, that's what I want. And we've seen both those guys kind of tail off over the last month or two. I mean, Asterio Ruiz has 0 home runs, 2 runs, 4 RBIs, and a 229 on base percentage over the last month. So I mean, both those guys. I mean, that trade has kind of turned into a dud. And that's kind of what I'm saying with these guys trading so early. Yeah, it can work out. You can get the Jonathan India before kind of the breakout, who is kind of slowed down himself. But or you can wait and get more of a certified better asset maybe later down the road. So I mean, there's not one way to do it, but there's not a right way or a wrong way, but it just kind of, you increase the risk factor when you kind of trade known commodities for some maybes early on in the season. So I could see it. I understand why the trade has to be made, why those kind of trades have to be made, but there's, I guess, risk factor in every trade that we make.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Ruiz is one of those guys where if he steals 60, 65 bags, I mean, he's in no doubt about it. I know we talked about how steals are more frequent, but he's in no doubt about a keeper at that. I mean, if you could plug him into the lineup and get that many steals, that's insane.
Yeah.
Um, I think an interesting thing to look back on certain trades is just how much they've almost like not worked out for either side a lot of times too. Like it's just kind of been like blah blah when we make such a big deal about them when they happen, and then really when you look back at them, it's like, oh wow, that really didn't help either side or just very little helped one side. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let us jump into our power rankings now. As usual, we'll work from the bottom up. We're actually gonna do little tiers today. We have 3 different tiers. These 3 tiers are going to be the hopefully next year's, the maybe next year's, the guys that we have completely written off for this year, as we should. And then we have our hanging on for dear life tier. And then our final tier will be our contenders, which, as you guys will notice, our contender tier is larger than it has ever been this year. We have so many guys that are kind of in the mix for head to head, in the mix for roto, and it's been really good to see some of the increased parity this year. Some would argue that it's good, some would argue that it's bad, but it's really good to see this many people relevant. I think that's also part of the reason. Like, the 8th place team doesn't want to trade away and doesn't really want to trade for, because they don't know which lane they should be in and they don't want to make other teams better. And I think it's kind of been an interesting dynamic
I
this
mean,
year.
look at real life baseball. I mean, we're 6 days away from the trade deadline, and there has been nothing.
Yeah, that is
I
also
mean,
true.
literally
Increased
nothing.
wild card has increased the parity in the league too.
Yep, no
All
doubt.
right, so let's go to our 14th ranked team. This is going to be our newcomer, Jordan. So let's go to Jordan's team here. The thing's kind of in the way here. Sorry, navigating the new site. I don't usually go on desktop very much, so still also kind of learning this myself here. Jordan's team. Jordan messed up the draft a little bit. He didn't realize that we didn't draft reserve players, and he blew his load early, and he had drafted some interesting guys. Unfortunately, he drafted Corbin Carroll. That trade of him didn't really work out for him, and he traded a lot of his veterans out of his C contracts early, and basically got nothing but A and B contracts for most of the year. He's kind of dropped some guys here and there, and that's some of the C contracts that you see now. But not only has Jordan's team been terrible this year, I think that he has done a terrible job of building towards next year. I look at this team and I don't really see many guys that I'm like, oh yeah, he's really glad that he has him for next year. Like, oh, like that's a prized asset for next year. Like, I'm looking up and down this roster, and he put his eggs in some really bad baskets. And even guys like Volpe and Gunnar Henderson, who we was hoping would break out, come with some big salaries, 27 for Henderson, 18 for Volpe. And I just don't really see how he has set himself up for next year at all. What do you make of what you see here?
I do since the bottom 4 we're kind of looking at for future assets. Obviously, roto wise, head to head wise, they're out of it. There's just really no way to make up that ground.
Yeah, so let's
Looking
repeat
at
that. The bottom 4 we have in our power rankings of our maybe next year's, we have these in our power rankings are organized by how we feel they are set for next year.
Yeah, for these bottom four. Yep. So, I do see pitching wise. I mean, if we're looking at what these players have done so far, I think Bradish has done well enough to be a keeper for $7. I think Senga, obviously an all-star's done really 99 innings, 125 Ks. I think he's a keeper at $8. Justin Steele's obviously a steal. He's a keeper there at $1. So I think he's got three pitchers there in terms of next year. Hitting wise, like I said, I'm always a fan of keeping guys that are cheap prices, even if you can get them back maybe at a super close price. But I think Kim at $4 is an obvious keeper. I think Gorman at $5 is an obvious keeper, and that might be Outman at $3. I think if he kept up that trajectory in LA and was a starter, is probably a keeper at $3. So I
Yeah.
think he's got three or four pitchers, three or four hitters, and that's going to be about it. Like you said, I don't think his high salary guys that he took shots on, Henderson and Volpe, again, those were guys that you maybe should have traded, right? I think we had that conversation right after the draft. You're not going to get a higher price value than you are now. Henderson and Volpe. We talked about Carroll. Are any of those guys going to be worth their tag? Right now, only Carroll is. So Henderson and Volpe at this point are almost dead weight because I don't see either of them being keepers at that price. So I think he's got about 6 or 7 keepers, but none that are going to shock the world. Oh my God, this is a dynamite spot.
Yeah. Outman, he kind of got off to a really hot start and then he went cold for like about a month or two. He's played a little bit better over the last 28 days or last 30 days that we have here as I click on last 30 days. I mean, but only 14 runs, that's solid. 365 on base percentage, that's solid. But 3 home runs, 2 steals over a month, that's not terrible, but it's also not great. That's not going to help you win a league or anything like that. Gunnar Henderson has been the one that's played really well over the last month. And that could be a guy that a contending team might look to kind of sneakily add, a team that's looking to add a shortstop or a third baseman, who has got 16 runs over the last 30 days, 5 homers, 16 RBIs, and a 330 on base percentage. The lack of steals is a little surprising. I thought he would steal a little bit more, but that could be an interesting asset that a team could kind of swoop in on and add him. A team that actually has room to add a $27 salary. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about the pitching. I think he has some interesting pitching for next year. Justin Steele's been great. Even though he's got 4. Let me go back to his yearly stats here. Justin Steele's been great this year. A guy who maybe, if you waited a little bit longer to trade, maybe you wouldn't have traded him Steele because you would have needed the pitching. You probably wouldn't have traded him in
Right.
the trade. So, I can see it kind of going both ways. Kodai Senga is interesting. I mean, he was an all-star. He's pitched well. He's pitched well enough to keep, but gotta keep an eye on that 1.26 whip. That's something that's really high, and that kind of what he characteristically is. He's supposed to be projected as a high whip guy. But if he's striking out this many batters, 125 strikeouts in 99 innings, I think the strikeout total will outweigh the damage that he'll do in whip. But will he be as good as Dylan Cease was? I don't know. To be like kind of the I can afford the hit and whip that he'll get as long as he helps me in the other categories, maybe. And I guess he's not a finished product. I mean, he's 30 years old, but he's only been in the majors for 1 year, not even 1 year. So we'll kind of see where it gets him. But I don't know. I just feel like he jumped the gun too early on some of these trades, and I don't think he has a ton to show for it. And I don't think there's a whole lot more to say
And we're
about
going to
it.
mention it a couple times with these. Yeah, we're going to talk about it more with these pitchers too. I think you brought up a good point with the strikeouts. I'm noticing this year, I should have brought it up earlier when you mentioned about fantasy storylines. It does seem like there's not as many pitchers that are averaging a K per nine. I mean,
Yeah.
it really just seems like if you're close to a K per nine, then that's kind of a plus. When in previous years it was almost like there was a lot more pitchers that were averaging a K per nine innings. It just seems like so many pitchers are just below that, and it seems like it's harder this year to get Ks than anything. And I don't know if Ks are just down overall in baseball this year, if it's just something that's kind of a mirage in my head that I haven't really noticed, but it just seems a lot harder to find those pitchers that you can count on getting those strikeouts start in and start out.
Yeah, I was trying to look at what the kind of strikeout rate is per year.
And it might just because relievers are getting more innings and this and that. But when I go through some of these fantasy teams, like I'm seeing a lot of pitchers that just aren't hitting that strikeout per inning total.
Yeah. It'd take me too long trying to find it here. Maybe I had it there, maybe I missed it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I think strikeouts is kind of a weird one because we're seeing some guys that are still with some high strikeout numbers, but some other guys that aren't. I don't think they've changed too much. I don't think it's enough to be kind of notable, but I can kind of see what you're saying. All right, let's move on to our number
Right.
13 team in our power rankings, which is Dave. David comes in number 13 for where he kind of stands for next year. I have Dave a little bit higher. I have Dave higher than the next team that we'll talk about. The reason why I have Dave higher is I think that Dave's got some some guys on his roster that I'm like, that guy is for sure being kept next year, better than the guy ahead of him. I know when I look at Dave's roster, I'm like, Ketel Marte for $1, absolutely. 69 runs, 17 homers, 55 RBIs, 6 steals, and a 370 on base percentage. That might be, if not the, or one of the best contracts at $1 A that we have in the entire league. Tatis is going to be 44 next year. You're obviously going to hang on to that. Jorge Soler for 4. I mean, I think you're going to probably hang on to that with 24 homers, 54 RBIs, and a surprisingly 337 on base percentage. I thought it'd be a little bit lower for Soler. Torkelson's even played pretty well. He's going to be $4 next year. He might even kind of talk his way into being a keeper. He's got to play better over the second half, but he's starting to turn things around. And then from the pitching staff, not a whole lot when it comes to what he's got for next year. Maybe just Bednar for 9. So we'll see if Barlow gets traded somewhere. Maybe Barlow gets traded somewhere where he's a closer, but he hasn't pitched too well either. 5.15 ERA, 1.5 whip, gross there. But we'll kind of see. I just think that I would rather have the guys that Dave has, who I'm like, that guy, there's no way, unless he tears his Achilles, that he's not being kept next year. I'll take some of the surefire guys as opposed to some of the, well, maybe that guy would be helpful. Well, I guess some of the guys that you say are like, well, because he's cheap, I'll keep him. Well, I don't like the guys that you keep just because they're cheap. Like, show me the actual production that he's actually going to help me win a fantasy championship.
I don't know. The more I'm actually looking at Dave's team, I know I kind of put the future rankings together last minute. The more I might actually like Jordan's team more than Dave's right now because,
Really?
um, yeah, I think Yelich at $19. I think he's turned his fantasy season around quite a bit, where he's going to be close to a
Oh.
25 guy for sure. But again, he's going to be 32 next year. I
Mhm.
think Soler, you're right for $4, but he doesn't have a single pitcher that's a keeper. Other than
Bednar.
Bednar, like you said, maybe Bednar, right? Yeah, yeah, definitely at $9. That's it. Hitting wise, I think you would keep Soler. Tatis at 44, and again, he's exactly at 81 games. So you're looking at a 30, 100 guy. Yeah, you keep okay. And Marte. So
Tatis.
he's
Oh,
got
so you said
four keepers to
Tatis,
Jordan's.
Marte,
Yeah,
Soler, and
yeah,
Yelich.
yeah. So he's got
And
four
O'Neal Cruz.
to Jordan's 6 or 7. I'm not keeping O'Neal Cruz for
O'Neal
what?
Cruz for 13, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's still a to be determined thing. He just hasn't played enough. He just hasn't. I mean, he comes back August 10th, so you have about a month to determine that. I guess yes, from how many keeper assets Dave has, I think he is a 100% keeper for Dave's team. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, the dude's been awful at the major league level. I mean, Ellie De La Cruz has done a lot more in his time.
Yeah, that's fair. Ali
But
De La Cruz has also been historic in his
heck
rise
yeah.
to what he is. So you
Um,
can't just be
but I don't
comparing
know. I
him
mean, it's
to Ali De
close.
La Cruz.
Right. And I mean it's close between Jordan and Dave's team. I think the star power of Tatis you could say gives Dave the edge, which is kind of I think the way we're going with that. But I think Jordan's crop of 6 or 7 kind of low tier keepers where he's not really paying any price. Cheaper literally than Tatis's $44 are Jordan's 6 or 7 keepers. So I don't know.
Mm, nah, I'll definitely take what Dave has over what Jordan has, and it's not particularly close to me.
Yeah, I mean it's two different ways of looking at it. You go into next year's draft, yeah, who knows?
All right, next in our power rankings, we have within the 12 spot, we have Bryce's team. Now, I am not as high on Bryce's team because this is the one I was talking about. Bryce it has more depth. He has more guys that are possible to keep. He has more A contracts, more B contracts, more cheap guys. He has guys that could be kept. But I look up and down this roster and I don't see like the guys where I'm like, oh man, that guy is for sure being kept next year. That is a coveted asset. That is the Spencer Strider for $2. That's the Ketel Marte for $1. That is the Justin Steele for $1. That I know for certain is being kept, barring tragic injury. I just don't really see those kind of players up and down this roster. I mean, there's some guys that I like. There's some guys
Completely
you talked
disagree.
into, Doval and Rasmussen and Diaz, but I mean, those guys don't really have solid track records of being what they are and battled some injuries and all those kind of stuff. So you can tell me why you're higher on Bryce's keeper cupboard than I am.
I think out of the 4 teams that are out of it, Bryce actually has the most assets moving forward.
He has the
I think
most. I just don't like them the most.
I do. I think Turner for $1 right now is an obvious keeper. India at $3.
At 39 years old.
I mean, why not? Again, it's a dollar.
Why not?
Kyle,
Yeah.
you literally can't get cheaper than a dollar. That's kind of the point I'm getting at. With the production he's putting up, he's on pace for about a 25 home run, 90 RBI season for a
If
dollar.
Justin Turner does 80% of what he did this year, he's still a keeper at a dollar. I
Right.
just don't know if he's in the league at 39 years old.
Spencer Steer, $5, obvious keeper. Yoshida at a dollar is an obvious keeper. I would argue that Mitch Keller, I mean, it's not even an argument. I think Mitch Keller at a dollar is an obvious keeper. He's on pace for 200 strikeouts in a conversation where we just said that's kind of hard to find. Camilo Doval is going to be one of the best closers in baseball, or he is one of the best closers in baseball. Has him for $6. I just Hunter Brown again, $8. I think we're going to see what he does the rest of the year. That's another guy that is on pace for 200 strikeouts. That is kind of harder to find. The WHIP's a little high, the ERA is a little high, but Walker Bueller at $5, Edwin Diaz at $10. So I think Bryce has about 8, 9 guys. That's going to cost a grand total of like $40, where he can go into the keeper draft next year with needing 10 guys with an average price tag of about $35, $40 he's going to be able to spend. I mean, he maybe not quite that much, but about $25, $30 he's going to be able to spend on each guy because he's got so many just young fill in guys. And I really like what Bryce has set up.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously he's going to look to add, like, he's probably going to look to add, like, Aaron Nola and Ronald Acuna and Aaron Judge or Juan Soto to what he's
Everyone, anyone,
going
right?
here.
Everyone's available.
Yeah, Garrett Cole, you can kind of all those guys will be available next year, which would be nice to have the manageable contracts, which will hurt a guy like Dave, would keep Tatis for 44 because it'll take him out of the running for some of those stars that are going to be available. Not won't take them out, but you can limit how many of those you can potentially add. So it is good to have guys that are cheaper, like Doval for 6 next year, Tovar for 7, maybe Yoshida for 1, which is going to be good to kind of have those contracts. I'm just saying that I mean. I think Spencer Steer's not even going to be playing every day. I don't know what he's going to be in the second half
Oof,
because the way they called up some of their prospects. Yeah, if
he'll
they
be
trade
fine.
India, he'll probably have a clear playing time path. But I don't know if I think they've trying to move him to the outfield to keep him in the lineup. But we'll see kind of what the Reds do at the deadline, what their kind of lineup is for the next month or two. India's really slowed down in the last month or so. Melendez isn't what we thought he would be. Tyler O'Neill hasn't done anything. Yoshida has been very blah. He's been okay. You probably keep him for a dollar, but he doesn't really move the needle for me on kind of what he is for, especially for his return for what he got for Acuna. And then Mitch Keller has been terrible over the last month, and he's got now after his incredible start is now over a 4 ERA for the year. Yeah, maybe you keep him for 1, but if he's pitching the way if he continues to pitch the way he's been pitching, you can't keep that guy. He's gonna blow up your ERA. But maybe he'll find it again. Maybe he'll turn things around. Martin Perez has been bad. Doval's been solid. Yeah, he's with the Giants. If he keeps the role there, that's obvious. But I mean, I see what you're
Doesn't he
saying.
have 30 saves or
Yeah, I see what you're saying that there are guys here that will be solid, that will be solid keepers next year. I just don't see the upside, the ceiling of the guys that he has, and kind of where they are and what we expect out of them. I don't even know if I can say that because I mean, obviously the ceiling of Edwin Diaz and Drew Rasmussen and Walker Bueller is high. I just I don't know, just maybe it's a lot more question marks. I just
well,
have
here's my
less
thing.
question
Here's
marks for Dave's keeper situation.
my thing is because there's so many players are going to be in the draft next year. There's so many players. I mean, so many guys are getting thrown back in. We know this. It's the reset year we've called it. I would rather, I mean, I feel like you can almost get Tatis back at a $45 price range with how many players are going to be in the pool. I mean, I just counted the 8 guys I would keep if I was Bryce, and I did the math quickly. It's about $35 for those 8 guys. $35. Tatis is $44 next year, and that's one guy. And we're not talking about maybe keepers for Bryce. We're talking about guys that are these are producers. Justin Turner, Jonathan India, Spencer Steer. They would be in my lineup. I mean,
Right now, yes.
Yoshida, he'd be in my lineup right now. I mean,
Yeah.
these are guys, Doval. So they're all cheap. So they're all keepers. I mean, we're talking
Yeah,
8 dudes
probably.
for like $35. I love Bryce. I love what Bryce has done. I think he's done a good job.
I think he's done an okay job.
I mean, you
He's got
can't
pieces
expect for
there,
him to
but
have. See, my thing is we're gonna look. Well, how many? I mean, how many? We've had this conversation a little bit. How many guys are actually keeping dudes that are over $30 next year? I mean, genuinely, unless they're dynamite, 100% keepers, the Corbin Carrolls, which was surprising to some, this and that. How many guys are really keeping dudes over $30? Tatis is going to be one of very, very few. So I
yeah.
think the fact that you can reel in 8 names compared to the one name that Dave has, is way
That's
better.
just one name.
Or two names, Yelich at 32. But Yelich at 32, I forgot.
Oh,
I'll take
for
Spencer
guys
Steer
over
next
30.
year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, to each his own. And then we have our last guy in this tier, which is a guy that is out of it for this year. We are completely counting out of it, who has built towards next year. And that's going to be Crimmy's team, which I'm kind of surprised, given everything that you said, that you can still put Crim's team ahead of what we see out what you like out of Bryce's team. I'm surprised that you put Crim still ahead of him. Krim has the guys that I'm like, all right, this guy is maybe the best asset for next year, which is Spencer Strider, who's going to be $7 pitcher next year, who maybe is the best pitcher in baseball right now. And I like that asset there. Reed Detmers for 9 next year is going to be a maybe. He's shown flashes. His stuff is good, but he's still got to put it together numbers wise. He's still got a 4.38 ERA and a 1.3 WHIP. He's another guy where like, oh, we love Reed Detmers. His slider is so good, and all the underlying stuff is good, and then he just continues to pitch poorly. And then hitting wise, Jake Fraley's been really good. For $6 going to be next year. Lars Nootbaar I like for 6, Morel for 2. Hopefully he keeps getting regular playing time where he can be kept for 2. Alec Boehm has been disappointing for what Eric thought he might be in his bold takes. Doesn't mean he's been bad. He's got 61 RBIs and a 330 on base percentage, but only 9 home runs kind of hurts you a little bit. And then Paredes is $3, but Paredes doesn't play every day. His numbers are solid: 18 homers, 59 RBIs, and a 362 on base percentage. But he's been healthy most of the year, and he only has 286 at bats because the Rays don't play him every day. So I like that he's kind of got the top of the line keepers, but I think arguments could definitely be made that both Dave and Bryce have better situations than Krim, but somehow we both kind of at first glance put him as our top.
I got Bryce at
You
11.
didn't. Okay, I'm taking another look at it. You put Bryce
Yeah.
ahead of Krim. All right, go ahead and tell me why you put Bryce ahead of Krim.
I like Bryce's, like I said, pool of guys a little bit more than Krim. Again, I think Krim's got some. I think Paredes is a keeper. I mean, again, I still think that plays $3, eight, like you said, 18 home runs, whether he's playing every day or not, that those are still fantasy starter numbers right now.
Okay.
Christopher Morel, again, we're Cubs fans. We know kind of the situation he's in. I think you look at those numbers and the at bats and you automatically think, oh, wow, that's an easy keep. You double those numbers, Kyle. Those are amazing. 30 home runs, 86. But for some reason, he doesn't play every day. We know this. And it's kind of interesting. And I would say he's a dynamite easy keeper at $2, but it's not just so easy to say that, if you know what I mean. Like the numbers are there, but it's also kind of tough given the situation.
And the runs and
Again, I
RBIs
think
are
Nootbaar could be.
lackluster for Morel too, because he's only got 38 runs and 43 RBIs. But even if you double those, that's 30 homers, 80 and 80. But that's even still only in 418 at
400
bats.
at bats. Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
what I'm
I mean,
saying.
so it's really not bad at all. They're really good numbers per
Yeah,
appearance.
which is why I think you keep Morel. I think you keep Nootbaar over a full season. He's close to a 2020 guy. It's looking like I mean, he needs talk about trade assets. Sawinski needs to go. He's a C contract. He needs to go. He's putting up a really good season for Pittsburgh. But Fraley, like I said, I think is a keeper. On the pitching side, I don't know if I'd quite say Savali. I think he's always been a low K guy. We'll see if that ERA and WHIP stay. I
Yeah,
think it's tough. Sonny Gray is, Spencer
started
Strider
out so
is.
good, not been too good lately.
Yeah, I think Gray is, Strider is, and those few I named on offense, Nootbaar, Morel, Paredes. So again, those 5 or 6. That's why I think Bryce really out of those 4 has done the best job.
Yeah, I mean, argument could be made that Bryce did the most with some of his transactions to be put in the same spot. It took, in order to get the one guy that Krim kind of got that we feel the best about, Spencer Strider, he had to give up Bobby Witt, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and it was Yu Darvish, I think, and then I think there was one more in there too, in that deal. But I mean, if he kind of pawned those off separately, I don't know if we'd feel differently about his situation. But I also don't know how many buyers we have left that really have true assets to give up that are really interested. And I think if we go through all these teams, we can talk about the moves that can be made a little bit in the short time that we have. Within about an hour and 6 minutes we have left before if we get through everything. But I don't know how many guys, Ellie De La Cruz was an asset for a while that you could have moved, but you're not moving him anymore. Andrew Painter was a guy that you could have moved, but he's already been dropped for arm surgery. So I'm just not sure how many assets are left to be kind of moved around the league. I mean, there's still a couple, but we'll kind of see if this four pack of teams, if they can kind of load up anymore, how much more they have to give, and maybe hopefully we'll have one more podcast before the trade deadline where we can kind of talk about some of those moves. Anything else you'd like to add about these four teams?
No, I mean it's kind of like I said, look for next year type of thing. Head to head, roto wise, they're kind of out of it, but there's some assets there where they should each have around 5, 6 keepers, I would think.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to move into our hanging on for dear life tier, which is going to be a couple teams here. I won't say how many teams are in this tier, but teams that I really need things to go right to either be relevant head to head or in our rotisserie standings. And we're going to start with Chris's team first here. If we kind of look at where Chris's team is here, let's go to our standings here. Chris, in regards to rotisserie, is down in 10th place. He has 58 and a half points. So it's looking pretty bleak for the rotisserie to get into. You have to get into third place to cash in rotisserie. But if we look at the combined rankings for where we're at in playoffs, let's see. He is only 2.5 games back of the 3 seed, of Eric being the 3 seed right now. So he is still very much alive in the head-to-head right now. Where 2.5 games, that's just one solid week. And all you got to do is sneak into the 6 seed and get through the playoffs for your share of 500 buckaroos. Remember, head-to-head is all or nothing. You just got a 2-week playoffs, or 2-week matchups, I should say. You win 3 weeks in the playoffs, you take home the playoff head-to-head league championship, and that's $500 in your pocket. So these guys that are kind of hanging on here have every reason not to sell right now, because one good week of one good starting pitching, and Eric, if you go 2-8 this week, and Chris has a really good pitching week, and the offense brings it together, and he goes 8-2, boom, he's right there as a 5 or 6 seed, and anything can happen. This is baseball; anything can happen. So where Chris's team is at, how do you feel about the roster that he has right now and his chances of kind of putting things together and as we kind of move towards the playoffs?
That's why it's kind of interesting because when we kind of talk about the hanging on for dear life category and kind of where to place it right now, we're going to talk about a team that we both like a little bit more overall, Phil's team coming up, which head to head wise is hanging on for a lot more dear
Yeah.
life than Chris's. So Chris has all season done a pretty good job of, maybe not being up there roto wise, but head to head wise, he's won his categories week in and week out, stayed afloat, done what he needed to do overall for that. So I think he's done a good job with that. Let's see. Looking at his team here, obviously it's going to be led by Freddie Freeman. Andrew Vaughn's still not really hitting home runs for the pedigree that he was supposed to have, but
Andrew Vaughn
I just
doesn't
think
hit
there's
home
just
runs.
a few. No, he doesn't. There's just again a few underperformers. I mean, Castellanos. I think again we were expecting a little bit more out of Vaughn. Bo Bichette. I wouldn't say he's underperforming right now, but it's not
They're pretty
quite
quiet
again
lately.
what he's capable of. Yeah, George Springer's another one. It's just a lot. JD Martinez has done a good job, but it just seems like a lot of guys that aren't quite playing
A lot
up
of
to their
names.
potential. Yeah, it is. Francisco Alvarez though for a catcher, 19 home runs in those small plate appearances. That's a nice little player there. But pitching wise, again, when you go to his team and you see those huge ERAs outside of everyone that's a star, outside of Cole, Garrett, Kremer, Lynn, Peralta, you got the relievers that are doing well, but injuries here and there. Chris Sale's obviously been banged up, so no surprise there. You're Queedy, so he's really just had to throw in a bunch of these no-name pitchers who I couldn't tell you who Dean Kremer and Braxton Garrett were before the season. So
Yeah.
it's tough. It's a hard knock life staying alive. I think the offense has the names. It's staying afloat. Can it sit there and win head to head categories week in and week out? It's going to need to count on its offense and the power of Garrett Cole.
Yeah, and so when I look at Chris's team, it has some holes. I mean, he's had the one closer for most of the year. I think he could have probably added a closer, a while ago. But I think that he's just kind of been in a place where he's been in limbo essentially all year. He's loaded with expensive C contracts. He's not sure whether to buy, whether to sell, whether to offload some of the A contracts to get some guys, whether to go the opposite way. And I think it's kind of put him in this state of limbo where he's just, I don't want to make the wrong move. I don't want to buy when I should have sold. I don't want to buy and then go 1-9 and be out of it. I don't want to sell and then, sell too early. So And then obviously when you sell, it turns into $100 donation for the year. You just give away your league fee, and it just for another year. So I think it's kind of been tough for him kind of navigating that, and trying to figure out what he wants to do. I think the pieces are there. I mean, anybody can go on a run, and I think that he's got the name value here. I mean, Lance Lynn can get hot. We've seen him get hot. Garrett Cole is Garrett Cole. Braxton Garrett had a really good month, but now is kind of back down to earth. Frederico Peralta's pitched good in stretches. And then if he adds Chris Sale back to this, he adds a closer, the pitching staff won't look bad, and it will definitely have potential to beat anybody in any given week. And then obviously the offense. Freddie Freeman has been like the fourth best offensive guy this year, behind Tatis, Acuna, and Corbin Carroll. I think Freddie Freeman's kind of right there in that four pack of guys. We know what Bichette is. We know what Castellanos is. We know what Springer is. And those guys haven't played like elite, but they've played well. And obviously JD Martinez is having an incredible year at age 35. So I think the pieces are there. I think he could add a few guys and not really mortgage the future entirely. I think that if he replaced, an Austin Hayes in the lineup, if he got a second closer, if he had upgraded at second base, maybe, I think that it would make him formidable. And I think it's worth it for him. What's he going to get at this point for selling? Maybe if something comes across where he gets some really good assets and it really pushes him over the top, and is like, what, I would like to compete this year, but this is just something that I can't turn down, then I think that's kind of where he's at. But I think that this team has enough potential to just be like, if I'm going to get just some blah guy back, like that may or may not be kept, I'm not going to just sell these guys for nothing. So I think it's kind of an okay place to be, but I think that's kind of why we've seen him be a little bit quiet so far this year.
And I think you're right on the second closer thing, because if I wouldn't, obviously Chris probably isn't looking at this too much from a roto perspective anymore, but
Yeah.
he's still very much in it from head to head. If he gets a second closer and can try to lock down that category week in and week out, all of his pitchers are actually pretty high on strikeouts. So if you
Mhm.
can sit there and say, hey, I want to take the strikeout category and the save category from a pitching perspective, and then offense with the names he has, he could take most offensive categories. On base percentage might be a little bit of a struggle, but he kind of balances that out pretty well. But I think from a head to head perspective, especially when you come playoffs, like you said, playoffs are 2 weeks. If it matches up just right, where you get Garrett Cole on getting 3 starts in that 2 week span, throw in everything else, yeah, Chris's team might be able to hang around head to head wise. I mean, he's sneaking in there right now. He's above 500. So
What kind of player would you like to see Chris add? Do you see kind of like a path to some moves that he can make? To me, like I think that if I'm him, I'm looking for some kind of buy low, historically good second half guys, or just maybe even some streaky guys that can just get hot and carry him in any head-to-head standpoint. Selfishly speaking, I could see Chris taking on a guy like Yu Darvish and Brandon Lau in a deal, guys who are historically very streaky players, who have not played well, who he could kind of scoop up on the buy low and then kind of hope that they got hot to make his run. But is there kind of some an area where you could see him look to add here?
like I said, I think with the pitchers he has, he's not going to change it like a kind of, no, I don't want to say bad rotation, but a kind of just throw it out there rotation right now with Garrett and Kramer and Lynn. That's the ERA, the whip's high. I don't think that's going to change. So I'd really zone in on those strikeouts and saves. So I think, is it Bryce, the team that has like more saves than he really needs to have saves for? He's got a ton of
Burns
them.
when IPV certainly does.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at possibly getting a second closer. I don't know if Bryce would give up Doval, especially the fact that he is a keeper next year. So
Yeah.
Chris might have to give up more than he would like. But man, Doval, someone like that would I think be perfect for
Bryce
this team.
only has Doval. He's got Doval and Fairbanks, who are both probably on keepable contracts, but both those guys don't move the needle because they're not getting enough saves in a week to really move the needle.
Yeah, not yeah.
They're more like roto guys, and Chafin and Adam don't get any saves anymore anyway. Gallegos doesn't either. So and Gallegos, no, he's been healthy, but he doesn't get any saves anymore either. So yeah, I mean, but I don't know. Burns on a PV has some closers. That's all I know. But yeah, I mean, I think that those are kind of areas that can be addressed there for Chris.
All
Let's
right.
move on to our ninth in the power rankings, which is Dex's team. I had a really hard
Oh, I don't
time.
get a rebuttal?
You want a rebuttal? You look hard at work over there. Go ahead. Rebuttal away. Rebute away.
I want to rebuke everything.
Okay.
I'm gonna make this quick because you're eating
Let's
up
hear it.
all my bandwidth. I'm trying to download drawings and it's just taking forever.
Okay.
Biggest thing, and I think both of you said this in the first podcast that we had right after the draft. I needed my players to hit in order to compete, and they did not hit. Like,
Arguably.
I mean, you look at all my pitching staff. I needed not 6.18 ERA Lance Lynn. I needed my 3 ERA Lance Lynn, 3 something. I needed Chris Sale to not get injured, and he got injured. I needed to hit on 2 cheap closers. I got Duran. He did not start out as the closer, but he has come on recently. And then Munoz, I thought for sure he was going to take over for Seawald whenever Seawald got
Same. Yeah.
He came in for the save last night. How'd that go?
Man, shut up. Shut up. Like, you know everything. And same thing with my offense too. I needed, just going back, if you look back, if I did not have Cole and I did not have Freddie Freeman and I only had Vlad Guerrero in that place, do you think my team would be better or worse than it is right now?
Significantly worse.
So that's the reason why I made that trade. I needed something, and then I needed to hit on everything else. So unfortunately, it didn't hit. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I want to do.
Yeah, I understandably so. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not going to take your stupid closers. I'm not going to.
How dare you?
All right, I gotta jump
on that head-to-head. You're still in it.
Yeah. I know, and that's what's like. I can go like 5-5 each week, or 6-4 each week, and it's like, do I do it? Do I just stay the course? Do I buy something and then give up on some of these A contracts that I have, or run the table and get rid of all my C's, get all the A's, take the Bryce route, and go for next year?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I am torn. That's why I sent out that message yesterday saying, like Jerry Reinsdorf, I need to pull my head out of my ass and figure out what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Absolutely.
All right, take it easy, guys.
All right, you too, man.
Anything to add to that, Eric?
No, I mean, I think he's right on it. I think it would be hard for me to sell knowing I was into it head to head with 4 weeks left. I think that makes it really tough. So, and that's why it's tough to say, oh, go get a closer. Well, you can have a stretch where that same closer also doesn't get a save for 3 weeks, but I don't know. I see his point. I see where it's tough to kind of hone in on a spot where you can really get it. But like I said, I don't want to say Chris's team is scary. I would like to face it in the playoffs if he got in.
Yeah.
But I do think there's avenues where he could try to focus on those 5 or 6 categories and just sneak away with head-to-head wins.
I mean, that's the thing too, is like it can be done where even if you just find a way, like if he's this close, if he just can find a way to win 6 categories over the next 4 weeks, 6 categories a week. Could you really finagle your way into winning those 6 categories? If he says, I don't care, I'm going to leave Lance Lynn in my lineup because I know he's going to get me strikeouts, and I'm just going to go 7 starters. I'm going to win strikeouts. I'm going to win wins, quality starts in every week. Mm-hmm. I'm going to punt, saves, ERA, and whip. But then on offense, I'm going to trade Duran or whatever to see what I can get for an offensive piece, and then go all in on offense, try and win 4 offensive categories, and then win strikeouts and wins, quality starts in every week. Like that's a path to winning 6, and that's all you need. You need 6 categories to win the week. Really, you only need 5.5. So
exactly.
I mean, in head to head, it can kind of be done that way. You're just kind of taking yourself out of the roto, but he's already out of the roto.
Exactly.
So it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't really matter to me. So there's a lot of avenues of things that you can get creative.
And you bring up a good point. I said he needs a closer on the, like you said, the opposite aspect of he only has one. If anything, he could punt closing, get rid of a closer, and ante up even more on those pitching categories, like you said, K's and quality starts.
What do you think the trade value?
He's definitely got some avenues.
$2 Johan Duran would be.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that you could get a lot in return for a $2 Johan Duran from the right team. I don't know who that right team would be off the top of my head, but it could be something there. All right. So next we have in our power rankings, we have Dex coming in at number 9. I had a hard time putting my finger on how I thought about Dex's team. I see some holes here. There's not a lot that I love, but there's also not a lot that I hate either. I could be talked either way on this. So how are you feeling about Dex's team?
I do see where the holes in the ship start to be sinking a little bit, again from a roto perspective. But again, similar to Chris, he's in it head to head. He's got an above 500
currently
record.
2 games out of head to head, But he's
Yep.
also not too far out of Roto either. Oh no, yeah, he is. He's 68.5 in Roto.
Yeah, he's really starting to kind of fall off in there too. But I will say this when it comes to Roto, I'm still seeing 6, 7 point swings in just a couple days. I mean, we are still in that range. I mean, I've been at 75 points 2 weeks ago, and I'm at 85 now. I mean, it is somewhat of a swing. But I think Dex, I wouldn't focus too much on Roto, but again, he is so much into it on head to head. But the thing he is missing desperately is he will not win home runs and RBIs week in and week out on head to head. He has, I'm going to count him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He has 7 guys in his lineup that don't even have double digit home runs
Woof.
yet. 7.
And everyone has
When
at
you have
least 200
Nico,
at bats too. It's not like they haven't
exactly.
been like playing most of the year. And yeah, sure, Jordan Walker only hasn't been up all year, but he still has 220 at bats.
Yeah, and I know Bryce Harper's power outage has been like a story, and I get that, but you just can't have that many
Happens when
guys.
you come back from injury too soon.
Yeah, yeah, and you just can't. And his OBP is good. Everything's good. He's just not hitting for power. He's just not. It's just one of those things. And when you add Nico Horner in the lineup, Javier Baez is just you can't even have him in your lineup with the OBP. But he again, just like Chris, he's a guy that can focus on a couple categories. He's going to win steals most weeks than he's not. That is just going to happen. So he's got steals. He's got pitchers that can get some Ks here. He's got some K per 9 guys. I actually really like his rotation where I think he can win 3 or 4 pitching categories each week. I don't think it's a superstar rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a superstar rotation, but I think Webb, Stroman, Giolito, Barrios. Throwing Romano as the closer. If I was going in against that in the playoffs week in and week out, I would feel, okay, that's a pretty solidified, good rotation. So I think he can win 3 or 4 rotation head-to-head categories each week. Throw in the steals, and if you can steal one other hitting category, you're gonna be competing in the playoffs. But again, head-to-head, not quite there. I think some of those trades obviously hurt him. Some of them helped him. But it's tough. I like Dex's team. I think it could play spoiler in a similar way that Chris's can.
Luis Robert for Jaron Duran, who says no. Or for not Jaron Duran, the other Duran, Johan Duran.
Oh, I would. I think I would say no. I wouldn't give up Robert for that.
For a $2 keeper for next year? $2 Duran?
But they're both in the same spot. They're both trying to make the playoffs. Would you
but
argue
it would
that?
help
I mean,
both because
if Robert
then Chris
continues,
goes in on offense, and then if you look at his rotation, Dex's rotation, he'd have Romano and Duran, probably the best closers in the league. Sorry, Tyler. And then he'd have 5 pretty solid starters here in the rotation. That would get him to win many of pitching categories per week. And then he just goes. You already said he's not going to win home runs and RBIs, so then you just go in all in on steals, on base percentage, and runs scored.
I think it's a lateral move, and I also think if they're like I said, I know there's not going to be many keepers next year at $30, but if Robert keeps this pace, he's a keeper at $30 next year. I mean, he's on pace for 40 home runs, close to 20 steals, 90 RBIs, 110 runs.
One season he's been healthy, though.
I know, it's a risk, but I mean, numbers wise from this year, he's a keeper just from this year. But I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this rotation. Some mediocre strikeout guys. I think Giolito is the only one in his rotation that's striking out more than 1 an inning. Logan Webb has 136 strikeouts compared to 134 innings, so slightly over by 2 strikeouts. So it's a low strikeout rotation. Some guys that just have been okay. I mean, these guys don't knock my socks off. Stroman, Giolito, Barrios.
They're all top 30 in ERA.
What's that?
I said based on that thing we looked at earlier, they're all top 30 in ERA.
Yeah, they are. They're just okay. The whips aren't great. 1.9, 1.22, 1.22, 1.14, 1.11. So I mean, they're not great whip guys. They're okay ERA guys. And what that tells me is that their ERAs are going to go up a little bit over the remainder of the year. Doesn't mean they're going to be 4 ERA guys, but just means that there's going to be a little bit of regression that way. I don't know. I don't love it. It's okay. Yeah, sure. These guys can throw quality starts. Absolutely. Giolito, Barrios, Stroman, Webb, those guys can get you a 7-inning quality start. Probably more times than they won't. I don't know, but I just don't think they're great. They're okay. They're fine, but I don't know. And then obviously the hitting, the lineup is pretty bad. There's just so many holes, so many guys that shouldn't be in lineups that are. Baez and Miller and Duran. And like for Dex, like why does he need Duran in his lineup? He already has way more steals than he needs. So why does he need Jaron Duran in his lineup and his 6 home runs and 19 steals and a 3.67 on base percentage ain't bad, but like he's going after the wrong kind of guys here. Like this is a roster construction travesty when it comes to his offense. Plus, I don't know why he's got Owen Miller at third base. At least move Jordan Walker up to third base and then find somewhere else. But Owen Miller, why is Owen Miller in his lineup? He can't find somebody better than Owen Miller to put in his lineup. Oh, and then you're like, oh, well, at least Owen Miller's got 13 steals. He doesn't need 13 steals from Owen Miller. So I don't really know what's going on here. Maybe that is his plan. Maybe that his plan is to, I'm just gonna solidify. I'm gonna win steals every single week. But if that was his plan, he probably also wouldn't have Jorge Mateo on his bench either. So I really don't know what's going on here with the offense. But I give Chris a much better shot at making some noise in head to head than I do Dex, and I just don't really like what's going on here.
I just think Dexter's rotation is just a lot more stable, and I can count on that. Yeah, it's tough. It really is one or the other. Chris's offense or Dexter's pitching. You like Chris's offense, and I kind of do too. But I think Dexter's pitching is. I think this is definitely the best rotation we've seen so far. I mean, obviously we're gonna get to better ones, but it
Probably,
is the best one
but
we've
I
seen
think
so
that
far.
Christopher's rotation isn't so super far behind this. Like I think Christopher's rotation is like a C. I think his offense is a B and his rotation is a C. But I think
Right.
this rotation is like a B plus, but this
Yeah.
offense is an F.
I think Chris's route for head-to-head winnings is clear.
Yeah,
Yes, I
that's
think
also
Dex. I think Dexter's is a little bit more muddier in terms of, okay, what do I need to do to win 5 or 6 categories week in and week out? I think Chris's is a little bit more like clear in that sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next team, which is going to be a team that is ironically in better shape in Roto than he is in head-to-head. And this is Tyler's team. Tyler's team has kind of hung on. He's got a ton of C contracts. He's kind of all in on this year. He's made a couple trades. In some of those trades, he's acquired Ronald Acuna. He's acquired Kevin Gausman. And he's made some pretty solid moves throughout the year to kind of put him in this spot. Let's double check where he's at here. He is right now 2 games out of head to head, but in Roto, he is kind of right up there. He is kind of jockeying for position. He's in 5th place in Roto with 87 points. So he's really only 9 points out of placing in Roto. He's kind of, right there. So I think that Tyler is in striking distance. This is what he wanted. He kind of put his chips in the middle of the table for what he's been this year. We'll see if he can do it. But what do you think of Tyler's team? What do you see when you look at it?
And he's been one that's made some pretty big trades since our last pod as well.
Yeah,
moving a lot of big names around. Like I said, it's been really interesting to see that. I don't know if we were going to go over any trades at all, but
yeah, I've
Tyler's team.
We'll have to do that another time.
Yeah, I was going to say we are at the point where we're getting to those. We probably didn't have to look at trades too much for those bottom teams, but if we wanted to start looking at them as we get to these top teams, we can. But no, Tyler's team. I like Tyler's team. Obviously, Alonso getting back, he was banged up a little bit. That Will Smith trade was again huge. That was just someone that he kind of got for arguably, I don't want to say nothing, but again, he's really made some good moves there. Again, Arenado, this is going to be an offense that plays week in and week out. And again, he's not out of it from a Roto perspective, but if you're talking about it from a complete head-to-head perspective, that's an offense that again can take categories week in and week out. My issue kind of comes to the pitching. I don't know if Hendricks keeps it up all year. John Gray, I've never been a huge fan of. He's been fine this year, kind of like he always has been. Gosman's obviously been great. Eflin's been better than I even thought he was going to be. Tampa Bay knows what they're doing with pitching. So he's put up probably his best season of his career. But I just don't know. Can I trust Allen? Can I trust Eflin? Do I trust these guys going into a playoff series? Are these names I can count on pitching wise? I love the offense. I like the lineup of Tyler. I think it can compete really against anyone's. And that's really the part he's been struggling on Roto wise is the offense. It's been very right. Yeah, Mac. Yeah, that's a big one too. So I'm just not in love with the rotation because I'm not sure it can necessarily hold up. I think there's just a few holes in it.
Yeah, this has kind of been a puzzling one. Because I mean, when he gets Max Fried back, maybe next week, maybe the following week, I don't know. We'll see kind of what they're kind of projected here. Last rehab start, yeah, he's supposed to get him back like next week. So if Fried becomes your 2, Gausman's your 1, Fried is your 2, then Eflin's your 3, Hendricks is your 4,
yeah,
John Gray is your 5. Like that's pretty decent. Hendricks has pitched well. He's kind of a guy that's. Like I said earlier, Hendricks and John Gray are 2 guys that have undermined what the experts would consider projectable greatness from a starting pitcher. So it's just kind of weird, but they just keep going out pitching well. And except for John Gray yesterday, he kind of got lit up by the Astros, but the Astros they've done that to Gausman too this year. They put 8 runs on Gausman. Yeah, the Astros can score in bunches. So wouldn't read too much into it, but I like this rotation once Max Fried gets back. Plus, Bryce Miller has pitched really well. He's got a .96 ERA, and if that becomes year 5 or year 6 instead of John Gray Hendricks, this rotation looks pretty solid. And then we know what the offense can do, led by Ronald Acuna and company, Devers, Alonso, Arenado. He's kind of got names there. Now, here's where.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, weirdly enough, it just reminds me of my team a lot, and the fact that me and Tyler both pitching wise are doing really well roto. I don't know if it's just like the name recognition or what. I'm just like, oh, do I trust? Do I trust? You go look at my rotation, it's like a lot of, oh, I don't know if I trust these names. I don't.
Yeah.
And here I am, first in ERA and WHIP. Here's Tyler, second in ERA and third in WHIP. And I like Tyler's offense more than I do his pitching, but it's Tyler's pitching that has actually got him to this point.
Exactly.
So that's kind of where I'm at with him.
Here's my thing with Tyler's team. I still think there's some holes here. I don't love his outfield. I don't love the outfield of Ward, Jones, Benson. Although those guys have played okay, I just don't love them. I think he traded away Gilbert and got back Ward and Nolan Jones, and they've been okay. They just haven't been great. Ward's played pretty well, better than Nolan Jones has. His second baseman's Willie Castro, who's not really providing much outside of steals, just the 23 steals, but he's kind of hurting you in 4 other categories. His shortstop is Zach Geloff until Neto comes back, which isn't great either. So like there's some holes here, but here's what my question for Tyler is, and even for you is who's turning it on here to push his team to the next level? Because Tyler's team has played well up to this point, but he's still the 5th place roto team and the 8th place head-to-head team. But who can take it up to a next level? I mean, he got to where he is. He got to 5th in roto, 8th in head-to-head with historic performances from Ronald Acuna. Devers has played well, 24 homers, 74 RBIs. Will Smith has played pretty well. Pete Alonso had a really good start, and then it slowed down a little bit, but he still got 26 home runs. Nolan Arenado has played pretty well. His pitchers have pitched very well. So who on this roster can push him up further to get out of the 5 to 8 slot? That's my question, because that I just don't really see the real path here. His team, which has played well so far, but well has only gotten him to where he is right now. You'd think with some of the performances he had so far, he'd be a 1st or 2nd place team, and all he would have to do is sustain it. So do you kind of have an answer to that question or no?
It's almost kind of a wait and see approach. I know we haven't really like dove into the trades that were made, but I do think the one he made a month ago with Krim was really, really big, and I think he got a lot back. I think he got, yeah, I'm looking at it now. Gosman, Eflin, and Arenado. He got back, which I think that was only a month ago. So that's a lot of. I mean, Arenado's a big piece of offense. Eflin and Gosman have sure risen this rotation up higher than it would have been. So I don't want to say it's a wait and see thing, but I think Tyler's team is one that's kind of on the rise in terms of. I don't really see kind of what you're saying. I don't really see like this glaring need of like, oh, he needs this, oh, he needs that, because it's kind of there. It's just more of a matter of
second
them
short
playing and doing what they got to do.
He can't compete with Geloff and Castro as a second and shortstop. Yeah. And he's got outfield depth, and I don't know if Neto is the answer.
Right.
Either.
Yeah, and I think
like, once I get Neto back, I'll take off. Well, Neto's not really that great either.
Right. No, yeah, I agree. And I think he's almost got an influx of infielders too, because like JD Davis, realistically, I mean, those aren't amazing numbers, but you could argue a JD Davis should be in his lineup over a guy like a Geloff or Castro. So
yeah, he doesn't have a way to put him in there.
Filling him around and fit.
He doesn't have second base
exactly.
eligible players. So I think he needs to find a trade partner that's got a middle infielder for him. And trade away some of this outfield or third baseman depth. I mean, maybe he can make a big splash. Maybe he trades away Nolan Arenado or somebody to kind of make a bigger splash. But that could be something that's interesting. Maybe he could buy low on like a Corey Seager or something like that off the injury from Jay. I don't know. All right, so those are our teams that are kind of hanging out for dear life. We called it. And now we'll get into that leaves us with 7 contenders with what we have left here. So our last contender on this list, who is a guy that's competitive in roto, right up there near the top in roto, but is sure hanging out for your life and head-to-head, with kind of running out of time a little bit here. And that's a Phil's team, actually coming in at number 7. I thought his team would be better. Historically, his teams have been a lot better, especially when you have had Judge and Ohtani and Austin Riley for as long as he's had those guys. Austin Riley kind of turning things around in the literally last week alone has really kind of change things for him. And we were almost close on an Austin Riley deal. Then he hit 5 home runs in 5 days, and then that was off the table. His team has some holes. There's some things that we like, some things that we don't like. Obviously, Ohtani can only carry you so far. He's got Judge waiting in the wings. But what do you think of his team, and what do you make of his kind of playoff chances here to kind of sneak back into the playoffs?
It's always tough because I think throughout this whole season when we talk about like our power rankings and stuff, I think you've always had Phil a little bit higher than me.
Mhm.
Again, we talked about last year to this year how the offense is just, I mean, it's just comparing the offense is night and day. I mean, last year's offense we knew historic how good it was, this and that. And my thing was always, okay, if the offense is going to take a hit, then the pitching needs to be better. And my thing with Phil's pitching is it's not bad. I mean, Morton again at his age is proving okay. Those are really good numbers. Whip's a little high. Not in love with that. But Aaron Nola is not pitching like he should. You just got a lot of guys that, again, I just don't know if I can trust these guys. Even a
Yeah.
guy like Clase, if he was not getting those saves, which obviously is the important thing, he's not a strikeout guy. He's not necessarily always been a big ERA guy. So I don't know if I can trust this rotation. I don't know if I can sit here and trust this rotation to go out there and win. He really needs them to win head to head. If he wants to have any
Robertson's
chance,
been their closer pretty much all year, and only has
and he's
15
got 15.
saves.
Yeah. And I just think from this perspective, Phil's still very much into it roto, so there's not much he needs to change there. But from a head-to-head perspective, me and him last week, I even put it in the chat, we were tied the exact same record, and we went into Sunday with like 6 or 7 categories literally up for grabs. So I could very much be in his chair right now if it would have went the other way. But the thing is, it turned so much for him that he's 4 games below 500 now. Head-to-head wise, he really can't afford. I don't think he can really afford a below 500 week again.
No, probably not. Not with how low he is. How low? How many games back is he?
My computer's running a little slower. I'd have to guess at least 6 or 7.
He is 6 games back, because you are 8 games
And
back, and he is 14 games back of first place. So, yeah, I mean,
yeah, so I mean, we're talking with 4 weeks left. That's danger zone. I mean, you can't afford a 3-7, 2-8 week again. If that
yeah, no.
happens, I mean, he's head-to-head wise, he's done.
And I wonder if some of these teams start creeping up. I wonder if he starts to consider even selling. I mean, he's the team that could get the most from guys like Ohtani and Judge and some of those guys. But I don't know. Do you think there's any scenario where he sells being at 96 roto points?
No, I
If,
don't think so because I mean,
if
what is it?
Tyler
Top
keeps
3
stays on
cash
the
for Roto?
rise, if Burns and Peavy stays on the rise, if Jay or you or I or kind of creep up, and he starts if
Yeah,
2 weeks from now, if he's at like 82, 85 roto points, I could see it
yeah.
out
Oh
ahead
yeah,
to head.
definitely. I mean,
And
if
then
he's struggling there and he loses another head-to-header, yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities here, but his team has to play better. But thing about his team is like, yeah, he's always said all year, and I've kind of talked to him on the phone a lot and stuff. And he's like, I'm going to go as far as Austin Riley and Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge carry me. It's those 3. And in a way, he's kind of right. But in another way, there's just so many guys in this lineup that are there 3 category contributors that just aren't contributing enough. Tyler Stevenson has not been a top 12 catcher this year, even at a $1 A. Ty France, he is a decent player, but he's not giving you hardly any home runs, not stealing any bases, and an okay on base percentage, probably below average on base percentage, and not many RBIs. I was expecting more RBIs out of him. CJ Abrams, not going to provide a lot in the power department, not going to provide a lot on base percentage, but it's giving you the steals. Swanson, not been great. Benintendi, not great, not giving you a lot. Gurriel, sure, maybe some home runs, maybe some RBIs, but no steals, bad on base percentage. Nimmo, decent on base percentage, but no steals and not many RBIs, not okay home run numbers, 15 home runs. Hunter Renfroe, good home runs, good, decent RBIs, decent runs, but no steals and a bad on base percentage. So it's like there's just too many mismatched guys here of guys that are like 4th outfielders and just
yeah,
not guys that really are pushing you over the top, where, yeah, you are relying on Ohtani to hit you 36 home runs and 77 RBIs and 75 runs scored, because the second Ohtani has an off week, you don't have the guys here to really supplement that. And yeah, sure, if Austin Riley hits you 5 home runs, 6 home runs a week, yeah, sure, that's a possibility, but I don't know how much those guys can actually carry you when you're not getting really much of anything else from anybody. And I think this is a team that should do a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, a 4-for-2, or something like that to try and get better upgrades here. But I don't know how much outfield depth is out there either, guys that are willing to do that either. So that's kind of what I see from
And
the
that's why the
offense.
more we talk about, oh, go ahead.
I just say, yeah, that's kind of like the offense. And then, yeah, I agree with what you said on the pitching. Pitching just kind of lacks luster. I mean, it's okay. I mean, I could argue that Christopher has a better rotation. I could argue that Dex's rotation could probably beat this rotation in most weeks. I mean, it's okay. It could be good. Any given week it can be all right, but I don't believe in Bryce Elder. Charlie Morton's got a terrible whip, even though his ERA numbers are okay. His strikeouts are okay. Nola's been bad. Flip-flop of Charlie Morton with the bad ERA, but the good whip. Ober is hot on the scene. He's played well. He pulled off a good trade getting him from Krim. Scubo's been really good since he came back. Bobby Miller, once he gets Yuri Perez back, maybe it kind of flips a little bit, but right now it's not looking great for him. What were you going to say?
I was going to say too, I mean, I struggled with who to put ahead of each other, Phil or Tyler, and there's part of me that could see Tyler's team ahead of it. There's part of me that could see Phil's team ahead of it. But I mean, like I said, from a head-to-head and roto perspective, Phil, it's kind of interesting that Phil's a little bit higher roto, but almost getting close to dead in the water on head-to-head, while Tyler is doing good head-to-head, and roto is kind of right where I'm at, right around like 86
it is
points.
kind of
So
interesting.
I could see an argument for both, but
I say if I go back, I think I would put Tyler's team ahead because Tyler's pitching, I think, is better.
I think I would
and
too.
If you go star for star, I mean, Tyler's got Acuna, which matches Otani's production. And then I think Tyler's the rest of his offense rounds out a lot better than Phil's does too.
I agree. If I could, and I was going to say the same thing. If I could go back, the more we've talked about it, I think I would put Tyler's team ahead of Phil's. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the argument could definitely be made. So, yeah, I mean, there might be moves here, but I think that Phil's not in the business of trading a star. I was offering him trades for Riley to kind of get him some more starters here, but I just don't think that's what he wants to do typically. So I don't see him budging on something like that. I think maybe he waited too long to trade Aaron Judge. Maybe he should trade a guy like Yuri Perez to get somebody that can help him. But yeah, you're right. I think he needed to make some moves last week to make sure that he could shore up his head-to-head. Because I mean, at one bad week, he's out. If he goes 2-7 this week, 2-7-1, he's done. He's done it head-to-head. And then he'll hang on to Roto. Maybe we'll see, but it could get pretty ugly for him. All right.
I mean, it's crazy to think that like the season goes for another 2.5 months almost, but like head-to-head wise, we're down to 4 weeks. Like it's anteing up. It's getting close.
Which I do prefer the 2-week head-to-head because then all your pitchers get 2 to 3 starts instead of one bad start torpedoing you, and one good Austin Riley hitting 6 home runs in a week.
Or just the schedule matching up good. I mean, if we had 1 week playoffs, the schedule just matches up nice where you get 2 starts in a week and you just win the. Yeah, I would hate. 2 weeks is the way to go, no doubt about it.
Yeah, like those weeks where Peter, where his 2-start pitchers just all lined up, where he had 5 2-start pitchers with all strikeout guys, and you're like, okay, well, I'm losing all the pitching categories this week, and now I'm not out of the playoffs because of it. So yeah, I think it kind of mitigates that a little bit too. Where hopefully you get in a 2-week span, many of your pitchers should get 3 starts. Some of them,
yeah, definitely.
All right, coming in at number 6 in our power rankings is your team, the Kokemish E-Rocks Dynasty Squad. The Black Plague has hit this team. I don't know what Eric spent the offseason doing, if he spent the offseason kicking puppies or slapping babies or what was going on here, worshiping the devil, but he cannot keep a pitcher healthy to save his freaking life. But the guys that he has scrounged together have pitched well for him. It's a good thing that he didn't really have to give much up to get George Kirby and company. But the thing that this doesn't show either is you had other guys too that just aren't here because they were dropped. Because you had, who was the Houston guy?
Crap, I'm trying. McCullers?
Well, did you have McCullers at some point? No, but you also had the guy from Jordan. Guy pitched that also had arm surgery from Houston. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Well, I had Drew Rasmussen.
Yeah, you had Drew Rasmussen. You had Painter. You had guys that were not even on this team anymore that would have been better reinforcements. Severino's pitched like ass, and
I think I had Woodruff too at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, so it's kind of wild to see here, but then you look across the board and you got some good ERA guys. Kirby's pitched well. Lorenzen's pitched well. Eduardo Rodriguez has pitched like a star. Grayson Rodriguez has not pitched well. Maybe showing signs of life. We'll see. Verlander hasn't been himself. He's not Cy Young Verlander. He just kind of is what he is. I think at age 40 years old, you'll just kind of take a 3.5 ERA and a 1.15 whip, hopefully a little bit of strikeouts and wins quality starts, but even he's not even close to a strikeout per inning anymore. He's got 70 strikeouts in 83 innings, but Hader kind of supplements the strikeouts a little bit with really good ratios there with what you get from him. And Phillips has been decent, but you'd hope for a little bit more out of him. But what do you see as what do you like about your team? What do you not like, and what do you expect for your prospects the rest of the year?
Oof.
Where you expect to finish?
One of the other pitchers, by the way, I just looked back to my period one was Jeffrey Springs. I don't know if
Oh yeah.
that was it, but
Oh yeah.
that was
Wow.
him. Um, no, here's my thing, and I've kind of said it all year. It reminds me honestly of my previous 3 seasons in this league, where I see my team and I honestly really like the offense. I don't really see a glaring hole necessarily there. I think OBP wise, I'm there. I think I could really use home runs and RBIs a little bit. I think I got a lot of 30s and 40s in the home runs and RBIs, but a lot of that's also because I'm playing guys that have just recently gotten playing time too, not too long ago. So I think home runs and RBIs, I'm just down on.
I
That's
think
been kind of
having
the big
Donovan,
one.
Friedel, and Suzuki in your lineup all at once is kind of hurting you in that department.
It is, and it's probably definitely up on the steals and the OBP mark, but the home runs and RBIs have been tough. And again, pitching wise, I've really just survived. I don't know any other way to put it. Eduardo Rodriguez was a guy.
Thrived.
Yeah, that's true. Eduardo Rodriguez was actually a guy that I had for $8 in the offseason that I almost kept, decided not to. So getting him in the draft was a godsend. Verlander, since I acquired him, has been really, really good. These last like 4 or 5 starts, he's been great for me. Obviously, I got Hader when I needed closing. I got Phillips when I needed closers. I've just really been shuffling around, and now Hunter Green hasn't even pitched for me yet. Mason Miller went down. Walker was another waiver wire guy that I just picked up, and he went down. So I'm shocked myself that I've stayed this high whipping ERA because I
Yeah,
remember the
ERA
conversation
and
about
with
my team
leader, right?
preseason was yeah, for both of them right now. The conversation about my team preseason was my offense was elite or going to be elite, and my pitching just needed to kind of hold it together. And
Did not hold it
it's been a
together.
little bit of the opposite of that, but
Yeah.
that's baseball, right? So
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I kind of you kind of mentioned a lot. I mean, I just I don't like the future prospects of kind of what's going on here. And maybe there's a move or two that could be made. Maybe there's a trade here too. If you could trade a guy like Hunter Green, maybe trade a guy like say a Suzuki or something to get more and more pitchers. I don't think you're out of it, but I don't think that guys like Lorenzen is gonna sustain what he's done. I don't think Eduardo Rodriguez is gonna sustain a 2.69 ERA. I don't know if Grayson Rodriguez is good or not. I don't know if Evan Phillips is going to maintain his role as the closer, or they're going to bring in a guy that's going to supplant him. Friedel's been good, but it just not good enough for what you need. He's got 280 at bats, but only 37 runs, 7 homers, 33 RBIs. Grisham, you scooped up off the waiver wire. He's been okay. Correa's been bad. Suzuki's been bad. And Bryce Stott's been okay. Good steals numbers, which helps. Okay in all the other departments, but I just think there's too much blah going on here. There's just too many guys on the offense that are just average or slightly below that are kind of dragging you down. You don't have the stars here outside Mookie Betts to kind of uplift you. You can have guys like Friedel and Grisham and Correa in your lineup if you have your Acuna and Arenado and some of those guys that are and Alonso's that are bringing you up, and those guys to supplement. But I think you need a little bit more out of the offense. Hopefully, Altuve provides a boost, and Having Mullins goes down does that. And I just think there's some negative regression coming to the pitching staff, even though it's pitched well so far. So I think that it's not out of the realm of possibilities that this team just sustains what it's done so far, and you're just kind of middle your way into the 5 or the 6 seed, and then you kind of go from there, and the pitching staff kind of just keeps pitching at the level that they are. I just don't particularly see it happening. I don't know if there's moves that need to be made, but I just see this team as like a 5 or 6 seed at best, a team that's not going to make a lot of noise, shots fired, come playoff time, and a team that's going to have a real hard time creeping up in Roto, because I don't know how many points there is for him to gain. I think that if anything, you're going to lose some points in ERA and WHIP just with all the pitching injuries you've had trying to hold it together. But I've been wrong
I
before, and we'll see.
Yeah, I think like I said, the hitting I could see almost like you said it balancing out where I think my pitching comes down a little bit while my hitting comes up because I've had Mullins and Altuve on the injured list forever. It's just injuries after injuries, and I think every fantasy team's obviously dealt with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, maybe this is a surprise seller.
But
Maybe this is a surprise
it's been a
buyer.
lot this year. Plays
Oh, sorry. Kind of cutting in and out.
right,
Sorry.
and there was a point. Oh no, you're good. There was a point 2 months ago where Josh Naylor, I was trying to get a first baseman because I'm like, oh, Josh Naylor's not cutting it. Now he's one of the best fantasy first basemen in baseball. I mean, he's
76 RBIs.
76. Yeah, 76 RBIs. I mean, that's literally like almost double anyone else on my team outside of Mookie Betts. So it is crazy, and it's just kind of one of those years where you deal with it. My thing for me is roto wise, obviously I'm kind of hanging in there. I'm not really so much worried about that. I think on a head-to-head perspective, hopefully full health when I have an Altuve, when I have a Mullins in there, I think I'm going to compete every week offensively, and obviously pitching wise I've proven that I can. So I think if I get in a playoff week a two starts from a Kirby, if a Bieber's back, a Verlander, and I have Hader and Phillips, I think in a head-to-head week in the playoffs I do think my team is scarier than most, but I could also see where it could be easy because it just is a horrible week. It really is a hit or miss type team.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm having trouble seeing the ceiling here. But I think this team has a good, decent floor. I think there's the guys that you're kind of covered in every category. Your pitching's been good. You got the steals, you got a little bit of power, you got some RBIs, you got some runs. I like the floor of it where you've kind of maintained steady in roto. But I think that there's going to be some teams that are kind of rounding things together right now that are going to kind of creep up on you.
I am glad that I got Ellie De La Cruz over Jordan Lawler, though. That was good. That
Yeah,
was good.
that is true. All right, let's move to our fifth place team in the power rankings, which is Jay's team. Jay, who is we're looking at here, Gotham City Rogues, changed I think his name in the offseason here. Let's take a look at where Jay is in the standings. Jay is right now second in the overall standings. I believe he is first place in the American division. So right now Jay is positioned to have a first round bye in the playoffs. He's ahead of Justin by 4 games there. So he's right where he needs to be in our head-to-head. For the roto, he is kind of down in 7th place, 86.5 roto points, but certainly not out of it. I don't think that he's even out of it for even being in like top 2 per se for head-to-head. I think his team has potential to kind of string it together. I think there's a few maybe holes here and there, but what do you see when you look at Jay's team?
Well, that's kind of why I had him similarly ranked. I can't remember. Let me see if I pull up here on my 2.0 rankings. Yes, I did put myself ahead of Jay just because and it's kind of interesting that we're kind of mirroring here that they're right by each other. I think I like my offense. It's close. I would probably overall say his offense is a little bit better. I think I have the steals, some of the RBIs and stuff like that. But pitching wise, I would take my pitching over his. The pitching worries me about Jay.
Yeah.
Eovaldi's a little banged up, and I've never been a big Eovaldi fan, but he's done really good this year. So does he keep a 2.69 the rest of the year, which is what did we look earlier? Second in the majors. I don't know about that. Does
Yeah.
Alex Cobb really keep a 3.1 ERA the rest of the year? The whip doesn't indicate that. Neither does the strikeouts. So
Yeah.
I think the pitching comes down, and I really, really worry about that. And I like his offense, kind of like how I like my offense, but I don't think this is an offense that necessarily carries you to victory week in and week out. Jordan's been banged up. Brian Reynolds, I traded him at the right time, has really honestly been nothing since May.
Mhm.
Brian Buxton obviously has been banged up. The OBP's been horrible. I like, and even JT Realmuto, kind of a down year for him. A 305 OBP. The steals are still there, but
Mhm.
overall, I like Jay's offense. I do think it is one of the better ones,
Yeah.
but the pitching worries me, and I don't think there's enough offense to necessarily have that carry, which I think it might end up having to do that.
Look, we've thrown shade at Jay's team every year, and then every year it just comes out, and we're talking about the reigning league champ here. And it would not surprise me for him to turn things around and be like, well, what, my pitching, it might take a little bit of a downturn. Eovaldi, his velocity is down. They're actually benching him for the week. I don't think he's going to make a start this week. James Paxton could get hurt. He's been hurt for every year of his career. You can't say
They're all old.
Abbott. Abbott is just got called up. He pitches in Cincinnati, which is never good. And he's another one. The underlying numbers say he's not going to be as good as he is, but we'll see. But he does have 2 top 10 closers in the league, and Jensen and Presley. And it would not surprise me to go, well, you know what? Olsen, Albies, Realmuto, they're just going to turn things on. Buxton, he's going to turn it on and have a typical Buxton month where he hits 10 home runs and steals 8 bases. Teoscar Hernandez has been pretty cold. He could turn things on. Reynolds, we've seen what his upside could be. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if this is just like the best offense down the stretch too, and he just blows people out with his offense like down the stretch and just wins 4 offensive categories every week and then steals saves. And then it just comes down to, did his pitchers pitch well? Did he win ERA, whip, and all those? Did he strike out enough batters? He doesn't have a ton of high strikeout guys, so I don't think he's going to win strikeouts in many weeks. But in any given week, he could if the 2 start pitchers line up. So
Yeah.
like I could think that this is probably one of the scarier head-to-head teams because like these hitters could get hot. And then if hitters get hot at the right time, then we're looking at maybe one of the best offenses in the league. And I think that's kind of scary. And he's done it before. So we're not going to count him out. I mean, he
And
knows how to get his players motivated for the postseason. So we'll kind
And
of
he's got Kershaw waiting in the wings too. And I mean, at
yeah.
this point, you got to numbers are numbers. We're almost in August, right? So at some point, you got to look at the numbers and go, okay, Alex Cavier is 35 years old. He's never done this in his life, but he's doing it this year. You know,
I think he has. I
Jordan
think 2 years ago he pitched really well too.
did it. And it kind of this. So it's just one of those things where it's like we're almost in August now. At some point, you almost have to have the proof is in the pudding. So if these pitchers really keep pitch, I mean, if you look at those ERAs, there's not a bad ERA in his starting lineup. I
Mhm.
mean, there's just
Yep.
not. So I mean, it's just I don't know if it's just the names or what, but you just got to hope it holds through because you're right. This offense any given week can just completely turn it on.
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. So, and I think that's kind of the story of Jay's team. So, I mean, he's got to stay healthy. Once he gets Seager back, it's going to be even better for him. He's got Tommy Pham on the bench, and I think he'll be okay.
Kind
I
of
don't know.
interesting though that we both have him that low and he's that good head to head though. I mean he's what do you say the leading in the division for his head to
Yeah,
head.
he is leading
So
in the division, but he is one game behind our fourth place in the power ranking team, which is me. Burns when I PV. And I'll say kind of what I think the kind of story of this team is throughout the year. I think the offense has been okay. I think definitely some disappointing performances, obviously from Michael Harris and Jose Ramirez and kind of some others and Vlad, who I acquired semi recently, so I can't really chalk that up. But I just cannot figure out the formula for the pitching staff. I bench Yu Darvish the weeks he throws 7 inning shutouts. I put him in my lineup for a 2-start week against Pittsburgh. He gets fucking lit up for 7 runs last night. I acquired Logan Gilbert. He's been bad for the last 5 starts. I mean, he's been on and off. He's had a couple good games and then he gives up 5 runs. Carlos Rodon has a 7.36 ERA. I thought he'd just be good when he got healthy. He hasn't been. And obviously the biggest disappointment, Sandy Alcantara with his 4.7 ERA, not providing much in the strikeouts department. Only a 8 wins quality starts. He's not getting wins. He's not getting quality starts. He's getting lit up every other start. And I thought that my pitching rotation would be good enough to withstand Brandon Woodruff coming back. The 2-month hiatus when I acquired him. You know what? It wasn't. I was wrong because my pitching staff has not pitched well. And even Wheeler, 3.88 ERA. I expected more out of Zach Wheeler. Joe Ryan also 3.88 ERA. That's weird that him and Zach Wheeler had the exact same number of innings and same ERA. Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, I just think it all starts and ends with poor decisions with pitching. I've pretty much lost every trade that I've made this year, and I don't hate where I'm at in regards to where my team is. I don't really see a ton of weaknesses here, but maybe you can shine a light on what the hell's going on here.
I think I think heading into the season, if I look back on some of these things, I think the offense was the question heading into the season. That was kind
Yeah.
of what I was a little bit worried on. I know you had a couple superstar names, and you obviously have. I do think the offense can somewhat be carried by a Vlad, a Bobby Witt, a Jose Ramirez. You got to wonder where
Those are the
Michael
three
Harris.
guys I traded for about a month ago.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to wonder where Michael Harris has been. I mean, talk about a dude that's been MIA all year. I mean, you went into the draft and spent $42 on him. This isn't a
Yep.
B or C contract guy. This is a guy you liked a lot heading into the year that just hasn't been there.
Yep.
So it's again it's one of those kind of underperforming things. So Schwarber's obviously been there with the bat. So if you look at it just from a pure core perspective of Schwarber, Guerrero, Witt, and Ramirez, I think those are guys that can really carry an offense week in and week out. And again, Andres Jimenez, another guy you looked at as a lot of people looked at as one of the best $1 values in the league. And now you're probably wondering, do I keep him at $6
Yeah.
next year? I mean, it's
Mhm.
tough. So the offense has always been the question. I think weirdly enough, your pitching, you've survived. I think Zach Wheeler's been struggling, but he's done well. Logan Gilbert maybe hasn't taken that next step up, but he's done well. Yu Darvish has obviously been the one that's been struggling. Sandy Alcantara, but you've managed. I think the main thing that
Logan
you really
Gilbert, Joe
struggled on
Ryan,
this
and
year
Zach Wheeler
is
all have exactly the same innings pitched and ERAs. That's insane.
oh well, that is crazy. I think the one I don't even want to say it's a mistake. You've taken a lot of shots on guys in trades that just haven't paid off yet. You know, the getting the Brandon Woodruff, the taking shots on Jazz Chisholm. You're in a spot where roto wise you could probably take it and still be fine and still compete for that. So it really hasn't it really hasn't hurt you yet. But I think there's a lot of what if questions in your head in terms of, man, what if I didn't get Woodruff? What if I didn't get Chisholm? Would I be clear and far away the head-to-head winner right now? Would I
I've
have
traded
six
away
to seven more?
Spencer Strider. I've traded away
Yep.
Kevin Gausman.
What I mean, I think there's a world out there where you do have 6 or 7 more roto points or 8 or 9 more head-to-head wins, and I think that's kind of biting at you. But your
Mhm.
team's been good enough to kind of almost like hold the punches and go, you're still in it in roto, you're still in it in the head-to-head, and you still have Jazz and Brandon Woodruff waiting in the wings, just waiting to add to your team whenever they come back.
Yeah, hopefully, we'll kind of see here. So, yeah, I mean, it's been such an infuriating, frustrating year, and figuring out how to mix and match everything, and the closers and all that, and I haven't been able to make as many trades that I normally would like. I think I don't know if I just have this hex over me that nobody wants to make a deal with the devil. So, it's been
You've made
tough.
a lot of trades.
I don't, yeah,
You've
it's
still
my
made a lot of trades.
negotiation to trade ratio is at an all-time low.
Well, I will say this. You were going to bring up earlier, I don't know if you got to it, that there's been less trades this year. And I did want to point it out before we got to the end of the show. I actually looked up from opening day until this very day last year and opening day to this very day this year. There's been 5 more trades this year than last year.
Interesting. Maybe yeah, I guess the expectation is just too high after the offseason that we had of just
Now,
non.
I will say on this very day last year, there was one of those trade bonanzas where you had like 8 trades, where the
Oh,
league.
really?
So it was on this.
Was that included in the numbers or no?
That was not because I went
Okay.
into today. But so there
Yeah.
was like 5 or 6 trades on this very day last year, which would actually have
Interesting.
it pretty close to a tie.
Yeah.
But there actually up until today has been 5 less trades. And my numbers could be wrong. I did it real fast.
Yeah.
5 less trades last year compared to this year. But
Gotcha. All right. So I mean, we don't really need to spend a whole lot of time on my team. Nobody really cares about my team. So let's go to, and we only got about 15 minutes left here. So let's go to our number 3 team, which is the Platoon Pistol Pete's Platoon, a team that has all the star power, was very disappointing to start the year, and has just been on an absolute tear for the last month now, rising up the ranks, who is now our second place roto team. Unseeded Justin at that. He's got 100.5 roto points. He is rising up the head-to-head as well. He now is the 4 seed right now in head-to-head. He's only a game and a half back of having a first round bye, which he could very well steal by the end of the year. He's probably likely going to steal if his team keeps playing the way that it is. Some guys on his team have turned things around for the better. He has made some moves this year on the waiver wire. Hasn't really made many trades, but I mean, he's picked up Mickey Moniak, who's been great. He's picked up Luke Rayleigh, who's been great as a C contract. So he's kind of made some moves. Dane Dunning, he claimed off waivers, has put up good numbers. You like his team more than I do still. I am still looking at this team, seeing a few holes here, but at the same time, I mean, Julio Rodriguez hasn't played as well as he could. Machado hasn't played as well as he could. Trey Turner hasn't played as well as he could.
exactly.
And so, I
Exactly.
mean, it's obviously, it's always been the scariest team and what it could be, but I don't know. I just still don't believe that this is our top team. I have him number 3 in the power rankings. I mean,
Where'd you have him
Jonah
in
Heim's
May?
kind of slowed down. Arias is not fantasy relevant, I don't think, with 3 home runs and no stolen bases. I don't really like Luis Arias, especially from a first base spot. Gleyber Torres is slowed down. I don't really love him as a starting second baseman. And I shouldn't say that. No, he's got better numbers than Jimenez does. So I guess Gleyber Torres has been fine. You can take the lead here. Tell me what's going on.
Well, I've been kind of having fun with this in the chat over the last few weeks, but you gave up on Peter's team in the last pod. I mean, you pretty much had him dead in the water. There wasn't much of like, oh, he's coming back from this. I think you had him at like 11th or 12th in the power rankings. You had him
No, that is not
stuck.
true. That never happened.
It was low. It was not. You didn't have him in the top 5. You definitely didn't have him in the top
I had
7 or
him
8.
8th.
Did you?
I had
Okay.
him 8th in the May power rankings, which is basically where he has been up until the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be really curious. I don't know if there's land fan tracks to look at Roto for, like if you can like start from this week and go to this week.
Yeah, you
Because that
can.
would be okay, because that would be really interesting just to see like how many Roto points
So
he's
you just go to
basically
season stats and then you go to by date here. So what dates?
even if we just did it from the last pod, which was May 14th. So the week after that to now, I would just be curious to kind of see where the league has been
July
kind of
25th.
since then. Yeah.
So Peter's team first, Chad's second, Phil 3, Jay 4.
So that's yeah. So that's since the last pod, right? Yeah. So
Where's
I mean,
Dave since the last pod is fifth?
yeah, isn't that crazy? But I mean, that's just crazy that Peters. I mean, it's literally like four teams, and then boom, everyone else has just been average. But and even if you close that number down more, because Peters' team, like you said, didn't start getting going until when. So if you close down that number more, I bet you
Say
his
like
numbers just jump.
mid to late June. Yeah.
Yeah, they just jump 122. So he's just been on an absolute crazy tear.
Yeah.
My thing with Peter's team is I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly. The dude's doing really good roto wise. He's doing really good head to head wise where he could still get it by. And his best players aren't playing at their best levels. Manny Machado is not playing at an all-star level. Trey Turner is not playing good. I mean, both these guys have 300 on base percentages.
Mm-hmm.
Julio Rodriguez has almost a 300 on base percentage. We're talking about guys that aren't even, I don't even want to say they're hitting 80% of what they can do. They're hitting like 60 to 65% of what they're capable of. I mean, it's and his head to head and his roto is still that good. There's just too much untapped potential here. And I said it in May, I said it in preseason. There's just way too many good players on this team. And then the pitching staff is finally got it going. Shane McClanahan, Lazardo is one of the best pitchers in baseball. I wanted him preseason. I liked him a lot. He's proving he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Dan Dunning has been one of the best pitchers in baseball, whether we think that continues or not. And then Corbin Burns has really turned it around. He's starting to kind of be Corbin Burns again. So, and then Dylan Cease. Oh, your highest ERA on your pitching staff? Well, I guess Mikolas is, but oh, he's got 138 Ks. So I really, you say you see holes. I don't see holes, and I know Peter's not really much to make moves, but I mean, where would you make a move really? I mean, I don't see a whole lot here outside of maybe like a second closer.
Yeah. So first off, second closer, because he has enough strikeouts in here that he doesn't really need six starters.
Yes.
He has too many strikeouts as it is. He always has. Shane McClanahan, who has battled some injuries this year, who also towards the end of last year got tired and pitched really poorly in the last month because of how tired he was. Jesus Luzardo's career high in innings is 100 innings. I don't think Miami's going to let him pitch more than 140, 150. He might be on borrowed time here, especially if they're out of the playoffs, which they've lost 7 of their last 8 games, I believe. Dunning is not that good. I don't think he's going to be as good as he is so far. Dylan Cease is exactly who I thought he would be, which is, as I predicted, a 4 ERA guy and a 1.31 whip. You can't walk that many guys and have that little poor command and have a good ERA. So yeah, sure, the strikeouts are there. 138 strikeouts in 113 innings. That's solid, but that's not like I mean, yeah, it's great. It's great. It's good, but it's not like I think we expected for 113 innings. I think we expected more like 150 strikeouts from him. He just hasn't been as good as he is this year. And Burns has really turned things on. I think he's probably a top 3 pitcher in the league at this point in time. So I think the rotation's decent. I look and he goes, okay, maybe McKenzie comes back at some point. Maybe that helps, but he also wasn't really that good before he got hurt. Maybe Edward Cabrera could help a little bit, but he's also has a 4.5 ERA and a 1.37 whip. So I don't really see like an elite staff here. I think it's just okay. And plus Paul Sewald, he is his only, well, I guess he got Alzolay too, but they gave the save opportunity to Munoz last night. So I don't know if they want to give Sewald all the save opportunities too. So we'll kind of see. I don't really love his closer situation. And I don't absolutely love his pitching staff. The hitters are solid, but I also think that there's as much positive regression as there are for some of those guys. I also think there's negative regression coming for Torres and Adolis Garcia and Lane Thomas and some of these guys too. And Mickey Moniak and Luke Rayleigh have been really good. I don't think that they're going to continue to be that good. So I think it kind of goes both ways. I think this is one of our top teams. It's definitely a contender. This is a team that I wouldn't be surprised is our first place roto team or our first place head-to-head team. It wouldn't surprise me, but I'm just saying this team's not perfect.
He might have the best fantasy catcher in baseball too.
So far, yes, but I don't think he's even top 5 going forward.
For a dollar though.
Yeah, for a
That's
dollar.
nice. I would keep him. Jonah Heim. No, I don't know. Again, my last point on Peter's team is if I don't think we've seen a better offense yet. I just don't think we have. I mean, and I really don't even think it's that close. I mean, again, you're talking Trey Turner, Julio. I'm not even going to say the names again. I just really don't think it's that close. So if you're nitpicking that a 360 on base percentage Moniak and a 350 on base percentage with 15 home runs Luke Rayleigh or a 430 on base percentage, like that's kind of what we're nitpicking about the offense. Okay, a lot of people would love that because I think this is the best offense in the league, very very much still, no doubt about it.
All right, we're gonna go to Power ranking number 2, which is not my second ranked team. I have a different team ranked second. This is the team that I have ranked first overall in our power rankings, and you have ranked third. But the way the math works, our consensus rankings puts this person in second place. My first place, which is our consensus second, is the Wahoo Maniacs. Justin's team. I am giving more credit to him than you are, as I have done all year, and as he has continued to prove you wrong and shut you up all year. I like what I see from Justin's team. I think that his rotation is maybe the best in the league. Chris Bassett, Castillo, Pablo Lopez, Julio Rodriguez, Framber Valdez, plus 2 top 10 closers in Iglesias and Will Smith right now. Maeda's pitched well. He's got upside in Manoah, Josiah Gray, and Gonsolin on the bench. I don't think he really needs to have those players because I think I looked at this guy's in his rotation, and I like what I see here. Sure, Urias has a 5 ERA. Sure, Pablo Lopez is 4.22 ERA. That's not what I expect him to be the rest of the year. I think that they're going to be better going forward. I think strikeouts are there for the guys that he has. I think the wins quality starts are there. I think the ERA and the whip are there. But we also know what the upside of his offense could be, because this was the best offense in the league for the first 3 months of the season. Sure, he is taking some little bit of negative regression, but maybe it could upswing back up. He's probably going to get more out of Goldschmidt in the last couple months. He's probably going to get more out of Simeon. The runs and RBIs are there, but the home runs and steals aren't what we expect them to be. Oh, Rosarena's been pretty quiet as of lately. Maybe he'll kind of turn things around. And we know what kind of player Juan Soto is in the second half. And then you look at what are his weaknesses. I don't think he's got any weaknesses in his rotation, but you look at his weakness and you're like, well, maybe Joey Gallo isn't great. Maybe Verdugo isn't great. But I also think that there's maybe a trade or two here where maybe if Justin and I hook up for a trade, well, maybe he takes some of my depth that I have, and maybe a guy like CJ Crone, who I cannot even fit in my lineup because I have 2 other first basemen. And maybe if CJ Crone goes in for a guy like Gallo or Verdugo, maybe that kind of changes things around for him. And even Jock Peterson, who his overall numbers don't look good, but he's only got 198 at bats. So over, like, even if you were to double it, that's 80 runs scored. It's like 70 RBIs and 20 home runs. That's still only over 400 at bats. So really, you could almost like triple the numbers for 600 at bats to quantify how good he's been. And then that's over 100 runs. That's 30 home runs and over 100 RBIs with a 371 on base percentage. So I think Jock Peterson's been really good too. Gallo's been serviceable, 17 home runs. Not really good anywhere else though. So maybe that leaves a position to be desired. Verdugo, don't love him, but he's your 4th outfielder. So I don't really think that there's a big criticism there. I just think that this team from top to bottom is pretty solid. And I don't really see a weakness here. And that's why he is my first overall team. I think that his offense is good enough. And I think the pitching staff will be good enough to continue to be elite. And I think that he is going to make a lot of noise and be there at the end.
Yeah, I think him and Peter's team are very, very similar to each other. The thing about Justin's team is he's got a lot of good depth, and we've always talked about that with Peter is Peter does not have a lot of good depth. Hitting wise, maybe not so much for Justin, but he's got so much hitting that like it doesn't matter. He can probably withstand an injury and still be fine throwing in a replacement. Pitching wise, though, being able to have like a Gonsolin and a Josiah Gray, and I know it's crazy to say, but Alek Manoah did look good in his start back, so we'll see. I mean, it's why not, right? So we'll. I do like his even Wade Miley. I like his depth there if someone goes down. I think his pitching staff is probably from top to bottom, including that depth, probably the one I would feel most comfortable in, especially the fact that Urias and Lopez have kind of struggled to this point on the year. I'm a big Urias fan, so I think he turns it around. But again, it hasn't been there yet. But you go into the playoffs, if you're throwing out Castilla, Urias, Valdez is like your 1, 2, 3, that's great. I worry a little bit about Iglesias. When you're reaching a 4 ERA on a team that's supposed to be a playoff team, your job might be on the line soon. 1.3 whip, a 4 ERA. Those are just, I mean, plain and simple. Those are just
I don't think
bad
Atlanta
numbers.
has anybody on their team that could take it though. And I think they're paying him too much money to take him out of the role.
Yeah, but at the deadline to just be able to get even like a high quality innings reliever at the end, we'll just see. Like I said, I don't think they'll take him out either, but those numbers are getting a little scary.
Ironically,
but no,
I think that's kind of who he's been for the last 2 years. He's been about a 4 ERA guy.
Right. No, overall, I like Justin's team a lot. The offense is obviously there. I don't see many gaps there at all outside of the couple names you mentioned, which again is kind of nitpicking at such a great offense right now, especially since it hasn't been full strength. So his team's really good. I like it a lot. I think I like the ceilings of Peter's teams more though. I mean, I just do. I think the ceiling of of Peter's pitching staff. I think you could argue Justin's pitching staff. If you had to make a choice, I would say Justin. But I think offensively, if you're talking the ceilings of both teams, and again, picking hairs, Justin's offense is amazing. I would still take Peter's team in terms of ceiling over Justin's.
All right, which brings us to our number one power ranking team. It's probably pretty obvious. It's our guy that's been first in Roto for 2 months now. Okay, head to head, not great, but it's Chad's team. Chad has had some really great performances. His team is pretty solid, top to bottom. He's made some trades that have really benefited him. He's traded Jazz right before he got hurt. He traded for Blake Snell, who's been basically a Cy Young ever since he acquired him. Ironically, Blake Snell, I had him for like 3 weeks and he never made a single start because he was on my bench. That's how my pitching has been all year, even throughout all those shutouts that he threw and everything. I never got a single start out of him. And now he's on Chad's team, just pitching well. Tell me about Chad's team. You have number one.
Okay, Chad's team is number one for a few reasons. Again, I usually do my power rankings a little bit more of a head-to-head thing. Now, obviously, Roto and a head-to-head are going to intersect a lot because usually the top Roto teams are the best head-to-head teams. But here's what I'll say about Chad's team in terms from a head-to-head perspective. I would be scared to face this team week in and week out because when you're talking Gallen, Glasnow, and Snell, you're talking big strikeouts. I know Gallen's a little bit over a strikeout an inning, but if you throw those three in a playoff matchup where you're going to see each of them 3 times, you're talking a lot of strikeouts, especially if Blake Snell, I can't believe I'm saying this, keeps doing what he's doing. All right. That's number one. Throw in the elite whips of those other guys. I mean, Tyler Wells is a starter as well. He's been elite whip, K per inning. Devin Williams, elite whip, getting the saves. I would be scared to face Chad in the postseason pitching wise. And I know it might not look scary on the outset, but when you look at that from a head to head perspective, I would be scared to face that. That is tough. Wells, Kimbrel, Snell, Glasnow, all those guys, very, very tough to go in against. And that's with even, again, the depth. Christian Javier on his bench, Mackenzie Gore, Jack Flaherty. Would you really want them in your rotation in the playoffs? No, but it's the depth there. And then offensively, like I said, Lindor, Cody Bellinger, Corbin Carroll is a keeper right now. I mean, there's really, looking at it, not a weak spot there outside of, you can maybe argue he could really use just one big power bat that you know is going to hit home runs. Because right now the leading home run guy on his team is Corbin Carroll, which is crazy, but it is. So I think if anything, he's missing that super, super duper big power bat, but he gets away with it because almost everyone on this team has the ability to hit home runs.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I look at the lineup and Ian Happ has not been good. He's, the on-base percentage, the only really thing that's keeping him in a lineup. Steven Kwan, same thing. I guess the 15 steals is decent. But I mean, we're kind of nitpicking. Like, I don't like Steven Kwan and Ian Happ on a team where they're kind of your second or third outfielder on like the 6th or 7th place team. But I like the first place team when you have Lindors and Bregmans and Youngs and Corbin Carrolls and all those guys that are kind of upholding you in other categories. It's okay to have guys that, Ian Happ's not really hurting you anywhere, even though he's not really helping you. Same thing with Kwan. I guess he's hurting you in home runs. We just also got 67 runs scored, as you kind of expected out of him, and 15 steals and a 342 on base percentage. I don't love those guys, but I think they're fine for what kind of Chad has here. I do think there's a little bit of, I don't think Bellinger is going to continue to be as good as he's been so far. We'll kind of see if that continues. But at the same time, I think Bregman might be a little bit better than he's been. Dalton Varsho might be a little bit better than he's been. And so I think that there is kind of some potential here. But I think the biggest thing with Chad is he's such a wild card for trades right now. Hasn't really made a lot of moves. He's kind of shut some things down. I mean, we were able to make one trade, but like I said, I think it would make too much sense for him to trade Christian Javier right now to Chris for Freddie Freeman if that's something that they go in different directions. I mean, if you Freeman,
Chad would do that in a second if it would be accepted. Who in the right world would accept Freddie Freeman for Christian Javier?
A team that if Chris loses 2-8 this week, then won't have anything left to play for.
Christian Javier's got a 4.3 ERA, dude.
I don't care. He was coming into this year. He was probably the
Chad. Go send that offer. See how it works. But if you can get Freddie Freeman, do it, dude. Oh my god.
Yeah, but you could. Maybe it's not just Christian Javier. Maybe it's Christian Javier and Gore. Maybe he
still
also
do it.
Mauricio or whoever.
Still do
else.
it.
What's that?
You'd still do it. I'd send all 3 for Freeman right now.
Sure, then do it.
That's pipe dream.
Yeah, but I mean, how many better? Who can put together a better offer for Freddie Freeman? I think that. I mean, who could?
Well, first,
I'd take Chris Javier for $2.
Well, it's tough because I did say he needs a. it's tough because I said he needs a big power hitter, which but I would say if I was Chad, I would offer Javier Gore and like I don't know. I really don't know, dude. That's
First might be
a,
the
ver-
only team that has a power bat that is suitable for Chad's team.
yeah, maybe like a Nathaniel
Unless
Lowe.
Phil sells and he goes and gets Otani or Judge.
I think
I
sending
don't
back
think that
Lowe would
Phil's
make
going to.
sense because I think Lowe's a yeah. I don't know, man. That's tough. But no, I think Chad's team. I think you could argue right now there's not a single person in there's not a single person in that lineup that is like a bad starter. You know,
Yeah.
like you said, we can nitpick a little bit here and there, but there's not a bad starter in
Yeah.
his lineup. And to me, I think Peter again has the highest ceiling. But when I look at every lineup, every single lineup, this
Mhm.
lineup from a week to week basis to me is the most balanced, the most I can expect something out of it week in and week out. And that's why I don't know if it scares me the most, but this lineup's just really hard to beat week in and week out.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. I mean, yeah, at this point when we're talking number one, the power rank, because we're just nitpicking. Like at this point,
Right.
I can nitpick Quan and Ian Happ, but I'm sure there's a lot of teams in the league that would love Ian Happ and Stephen Quan in their outfield compared to kind of some other pieces that they have. So yeah, I mean, I think that this team could use a bopper. I wonder if like Justin and Chad get together and he could get Goldschmidt or something, but I don't
Yeah.
think it makes sense for Justin to give up Goldschmidt. So I don't really. It'd be interesting to see kind of what Chad could put together here, but yeah, I mean, it's there's no arguments on why he got to the spot he's in, why he's kind of run away with Roto at this point. I'm not going to say his team's invincible because I mean, even offensively, it's been good, but I mean, are you afraid of this offense? Because I'm not.
No, it's tough because it is really good, but if I was to match my offense against it, I would say I can beat it. And
Mhm.
I think against Peter, I'd be more scared of Peter's. I think against Chad's, I can go, okay, I can beat this offense. But again,
Yeah.
I just think so many people just do enough things that it's hard for Chad's offense to have a bad week, is kind of what I'm getting at.
Ironically, I'm not afraid of his pitching staff either.
Right. I think if Chad has one injury on the pitching staff, that's when it's danger mode. I think
Could
if
be.
I think if a Snell, a Gallon, or a Glasnow, and God forbid Glasnow's only got 54 innings on the year, but in those 54 innings, the K numbers have looked really good. The arrays look solid. I think if one of those three take a big injury down, that's when he's going to have to move some offense for some extra pitching.
The one that actually doesn't really make any sense of what he's doing here is why is Stephen Kwan in his lineup? Is Chad just not active in? I guess Chad's in the lobby here, but is he not active in, because Chad is first place in runs and he's I think first place or close to first place in steals between him and Dex. Let's take a look here. Wrong thing. So let's see here. Where are we at in steals, stolen bases? Yeah, Chad has 144 steals. He has a 30-point steals lead over anybody. So if those are the only two categories that Quan is giving you, he's 342 on base percentage. That's average. Like if he's a runs and steals stolen base specialist, then why is he in your lineup? Because that's the last two things that you need. Like you need
Same with
power.
Wander. Like I said,
Yeah,
if you want to start here and
anything Wander.
have some fun deals, I would trade like a Wander and a Quan for Freeman.
Yeah, that would actually make a lot of sense too. But I think it wouldn't make sense because I think that if Chris is going to trade Freeman, he's not going to win power categories then by making that move. And that's
Yeah.
if he's focusing on head to head, like we said, that his offense needs to win 3 or 4 categories on offense. So I don't think that trading Freeman helps him accomplish that.
Right.
Especially for not getting a bunch of power back from the guys that he's getting back. So
My thing about Chad's team, that's why I have it number one. I think if it stays looking exactly like this a month from now when the playoffs start, if that is his lineup and that is his rotation and there are no injuries and nothing crazy's happened, I just think going into the playoffs, that is a team I think, again, week in and week out will be the hardest to beat. Now, I think Peter can, like I said, again, I think again Peter can have the biggest ceiling. I think he could but I think Chad's team's the hardest to beat in the playoffs.
No, I think the opposite. I'm looking at this team going, man, I can't believe that Jay beat Chad in the first round after being so good all
Oh,
year.
I don't know. Yeah.
Like, I could definitely see that. I mean,
I
all
can
it
see it.
takes is Blake Snell walking 7 guys, which he's done before, and getting lit up for 8 runs, and Craig Kimbrough giving up 3 runs and a save opportunity. Okay,
Yeah.
now you've lost ERA, WHIP, and now then Jay, whose offense gets hot. Jay wins home runs, RBIs, on base percentage, ERA, and WHIP, and that's 5 categories there.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the
And
parity of the league.
saves. And
It does.
Jay's got better save guys than
It,
Chad does.
I don't know how I would put it into betting terms, but I will say this: I think there is a little bit of a gap between the top three and the next three. I think Justin, Peter, and Chad. Again, you know how they used to do the whole Tiger versus the field thing for
Yeah.
betting. Um, I would put more money on those three winning. I would put much higher odds on one of those three winning than anyone else. I do think there's more parity, but I think Justin, Peter, and Chad have a much higher chance of winning than anyone else right now.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree.
Uh,
Let's see. Orioles looking at 3 starters. Those are linked to Marcus Stroman, Lucas Giolito, and Jack Flaherty.
ooh, hey.
Interesting. All right. I think I could squeeze like 5 more minutes out of this.
All right.
Any trade deadline predictions?
For real life?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, well, the big one's obviously the Ohtani thing. Does the Ohtani thing happen? If I had to put my mind on it, I would say no. I don't think he gets traded. But
I get
it's just
very frustrated with the Ohtani thing because people and smart people and it's not even anybody's fault. It's just that's the way things work. But like people are saying like Ohtani, oh well, they can trade him to the Orioles and they'll get DL Hall and their top 3, like their number 3 prospect and their number 7 prospect and their number 8 prospect. And it's just like the odds are, like, if you do the math, like the odds are none of those guys will be anything. The odds are very slim that any one of those guys make an all-star team, let alone be like a productive MLB player. So like I never understand the math and why you even trade like superstars for the hauls for the deals that you get back. And like, yeah, sure, sometimes it works. Sometimes you are able to turn Jose Quintana into Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez. And like sometimes it
right.
works out that way, but most of the time it doesn't work out that way, especially when you're trading a guy like Ohtani, who is bringing in tens of millions in revenue for you and is a fan favorite and the fans love him and you're doing a whole lot good for the game of baseball. Like just hang on to that guy and try and re-sign him. You'll get a compensatory pick if you sign somewhere else, but like, and that pales in comparison to what you could actually get for a haul. But it's just like the odds are the haul you get back is not going to be anything anyway.
Well, and even from an owner's perspective, honestly, like if the Angels, and they've been losing a lot of games lately, they were above 500, but even from an owner's perspective, if you trade Ohtani at the deadline, your last 2 months of home games, if you're out of it, I mean, really, I mean, what do you drop fan wise? You drop from 40,000 to 20,000. I mean, that's a genuine.
Yeah, plans are
I
going
mean,
to give up on their team then.
yeah,
Too.
I mean it's over after that. So
Yeah.
and it kind of reminds me of the Cubs situation a couple years ago when all those dudes were expiring, and I don't know if you remember, we were all kind of reacting to all the trades they were getting, and we're like, wow, we are not getting any like top prospects. We're not getting any. We're getting like 10 to 15 in the systems. Though some of those guys have turned into the PCAs and this and that. So there is a little bit of a waiting game to it. But I generally agree with you. If I'm the Angels, is it really worth trading 2 months of Ohtani? And again, they use him in a 6-man rotation. If you acquire him, you're looking at before the playoffs what? 6 starts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a lot. So I think it's
and
good.
the offense, obviously.
And the offense, yeah, it's good for baseball in the last. I don't trade deadline's not as fun as it used to be. I will say that obviously the playoffs have changed that with the adding of the spot and all that, but it is crazy to think that we are 1 week away from the trade deadline and there's been nothing. We used to get June trades, like significant June trades. We don't get nothing anymore.
Yep. I think there's going to be some interesting names moved. I wonder if like Teoscar Hernandez is traded. I think Tyler O'Neill is traded. I think that Logan Gilbert might get traded. Seattle could be very active in all 3 of those players. I think that they're a team that's interesting. The Cardinals could do any number of things. I just saw a report that the Dodgers love Nolan Arenado and they want him, but the Cardinals don't want to give him up. Which, why would the Cardinals give him up? Like you're not going to get big free agents to really come to the Cardinals, right? So, it's not like you're going to attract a guy like Nolan Arenado to come there, even if you have cap space or like salary, whatever you call it in the MLB, money to spend. So like for smaller market teams, like it makes sense just to hang on to the star, hang on to the all-stars. Like the Cubs would kill to overpay for Nolan Arenado right now, it makes too much sense. Like the Cubs should start acting like a big market team and stop acting like a small market team. Well, we don't want the long-term big salary on our books. Well, that's what you do when you're a big market team. The Yankees weren't worried about overpaying Mark Teixeira or Alex Rodriguez or all the guys that they gave big contracts to because they're the fucking Yankees. And like I just wish the Cubs start acting that way. Like go just give Cody Bellinger a $200 million extension right now.
Oh no, stop. Don't do that. You're crazy.
Yes, do that.
No,
he's the only guy on your team that is actually an above average hitter.
Oh man, yeah. I mean,
like how else are you going to get above average hitters in this lineup? Because you're not going to win games. You're certainly not going to win pennants if your Dansby Swanson is your 3 hitter. I'm sorry, I love Dansby Swanson. I love Nico Hoerner. Those are great hitters, but they're just not guys that are going to lead you to the promised land. You need guys that have actual star potential, and Bellinger's the only guy in the organization that's like that.
Yeah, and I said that in the beginning of the year too, when we were in those shortstop sweepstakes. I'm like, Swanson was the number 2 hitter on the Atlanta Braves team. You know, he like
Yeah.
like you said, he's not going to be the number 3 hitter on a Chicago Cubs playoff team. He's just not. I hate to do the whole wait and see game, but I really think that these next couple free agent classes aren't great. I think what the Cubs plan is right now. I'm not saying we're going to necessarily be in on the Ohtani sweepstakes, but I think the next 2 years they are going to go big and hard on Ohtani, and if that doesn't work out, they're going to go after Soto the year after.
There's no reason for Ohtani to come to the Cubs.
No, no, not really. No, I mean it makes too much sense for him to go to the Dodgers. I wouldn't put money that he does, but I think it would be awful if the Cubs didn't give it a shot.
Ohtani is going to make way more in endorsements than he is in his actual contract. So it doesn't even if we pay him more, it doesn't really matter. Like and it like Chicago is not close to the coast, so you're not getting like the overseas like people endorsing him and getting that kind of money as much as it would compare to playing in LA for him, where you're
Oh
getting
yeah, or even a Seattle.
people. So like yeah, even like those. So like it doesn't make sense for him to come here. Plus like, well, you're gonna leave Los Angeles to Anaheim to come to Chicago, where your team is going to be worse than it was last year. You're not going to have Mike Trout on your team,
Right.
which
I think
maybe
it's
the Cubs
inevitable
be
he
a
goes
little
to the
bit better. But
Dodgers.
what's that?
I think it's just so, and I think the reason it hasn't been talked about so much is I think it's so inevitable that he just goes to the Dodgers. It's either the Angels or the Dodgers. I think I could see him saying, "All right, I'll stay. I'm comfortable here." If not, he's going to the Dodgers. I don't really see many other chances on that. But
Isn't it wild how much money the Dodgers have shelled out for players, and then we just assume that they're going to pay Ohtani? Like, why is that not the Cubs?
Yeah.
Why is that not
Well,
the
well,
fucking Cubs?
well, that's why the Dodgers were so silent this year because they were trying to get under the luxury tax because if they were over again for like a third consecutive year, it would have been like some stupid penalty. So I
Repeater
think that's
tax, yeah.
yeah, that's why they like cut under this year because I literally think they're preparing for the Ohtani free agency. And like you said, why can't the Cubs do that? You know, I think the next week for the Cubs from a Cubs perspective is really interesting because I know you've been on the sell train this whole time, but we got what 6 games before the deadline, 7 games before the deadline. I mean, if they conceivably win, which is possible with the schedule coming, 6 out of the next 7 or 5 out of the next 7, and they're above 500,
I think they have
that
6 games before then.
if they have 6 games, pretend they win 5 out of 6. I think that puts them right at 500 or
It
a game
does.
above
Yep.
500. That's a tough
And yes,
sell.
then they don't sell. But
Yeah, there's no way. And then, but here's the thing though. Then we start a 4 game set against Cincinnati. If we're a game above 500 then and then just lose the next 4 to Cincinnati, how awful are we
yeah,
going to look if we don't
exactly.
sell? I mean, that's just going to look awful because
Especially
Stroman
like
right
the odds
now
of you losing 3 or losing 4 to Cincinnati and then just
are
being
high.
low.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you because it's tough because Stroman can get you, especially with the way pitching is right now. We looked at ERA, we looked at Stroman could get you a decent amount right now. He's going to get you a decent amount, so it's really tough spot for the Cubs. I'm sure they're just sweating bullets right now.
I think that you, Justin, and I need to do a Cubs podcast and talk about all this either like tomorrow night or
Oh, I'm down, dude. Hey, we're at Teacher Life, man. We ain't got no jobs. We're good. I'm
that's
down.
true, but Justin does, unfortunately. So
I'm down.
yeah, I mean, like I've texted Justin 5 times over the last week and been like, what are we doing with this team? Tell me how to feel about it because I literally don't know. I could talk into being a buyer, I could talk being into a seller. I'll see one tweet and be like, oh, yep, wait, let's buy. Like, and
Yeah.
I'll think about it. Like, we can't get. There's no
splash.
Yeah. What's that?
There's going to be no splash no matter what. I mean,
I don't
there's
know.
no splash.
But at
There's
some
no.
point, you have to build your way up from the ground and into being a contender. You can't just be like, oh, we're going to sell every deadline. And then, next year, we're just going to all automatically
Right.
be contenders again. Like, no, how about actually just be okay and win 81 games this year? And then next year, add a Candelario this year, win 80 or 78 games this year, whatever it may be. And then next year, you're like, okay, now we're ready to win.
Right. And I could see Stroman. I mean, I have no idea how the conversations have been, but I could very much see not a handshake agreement. Obviously, he's going to test free agency, but I don't see him blowing up as much about, hey, go to a contender if we lose 5 out of the next 6 games at the deadline. Go to a contender, come back in free agency. Because I really could see that as a possibility.
I could, but that happens way less frequently than
you think. Yeah.
Think it would be. And you can't just bank on that.
Hey, we gave up Gleyber Torres.
The highest bidder.
Yeah. No, it's going to be really interesting. These next, obviously, 4, 5, 6 games for the Cubs are. And again, splitting doesn't help either. I mean, they really got to either win 5 of 6 or lose 5 of 6 to give a clear picture. But yeah, it'll be fun. It's been a fun baseball season.
Wait till last minute, but you also have to examine what's on the table. Like they're not just going to give away. Like I think that's why they hung on to Contreras. They're like, well, there's nothing on the table worth trading for, so we hang on to him. And I think if a team's going to overpay for Stroman because he's the best pitcher on the market, then maybe you pull the trigger. Team's going to big time overpay for Bellinger, then you pull the trigger. But if not, like if it's just an average haul, then like I don't think you just You keep
I
him.
agree. And also, a lot of people don't realize how cheap it is to just get like a productive bullpen arm. Like, it's not like a top 5 team prospect or a
Yeah.
top. If the Cubs just wanted to say, "Hey, we're buying. Here's a productive bullpen arm," you can give up like your 26th best prospect for that, and it looks like you're doing something. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see kind of what move they do. Yeah.
I think it would go a long way with fans too. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think at the end of the day, it would put more money in Ricketts' pocket, which is all he fucking cares about. Just to be
That is
like,
true.
hey, we didn't sell at the deadline. We're gonna go for it. And even if it's just a minor move, I think you're right.
Right. Yeah. We'll have to see. Yeah, I'm down if you guys are. We'll have to see if it works out.
All right, sounds good. All right, Eric, great job. Thanks for joining me. And this has been awesome. This has been the Boys Summer July edition, rendition of the podcast. I've been your host, Kyle Carbone, joined by my co-commissioner, Eric Follman. And thank you for joining us.